Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Falmouth Planning Board meeting of October 9th. The first thing on the agenda tonight is minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of the minutes of September 25th, 2018, as corrected.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public comment. Okay, this is, anyone here in the public has something to discuss tonight for 2 minutes that is not on our agenda? This is your time. Does anyone have anything to discuss that's not on our agenda? Hearing none, we'll move forward. Approval not required plans. Do we have any A&Rs that came in?
We do not.
No plans. Do you want to make a motion?
Yes, okay. Mr. Chairman, because we've got a number of warrant articles for town meeting to discuss, and we've got a number of petitioners here for various projects, I move that we take the planning board discussion for the warrant articles at the end after the applicants.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Okay, well, we're really moving along now, Tom.
We're on page 2.
Yeah. Planning Board decision discussion for Bad Martha's. Do we have a request to table this?
Yes, we are currently still working through the technical issues with the changes to the drainage and things like that at Bad Martha's, so we are not properly before you for that decision.
Okay.
Will that be at the next meeting?
It will. And actually, when we talked about this at the last meeting, because it was late and the meeting was running for a bit, the board seemed fairly comfortable with the changes that they had proposed to make. So it's my recollection, and I think the minutes will show that the board said, we'd approve this contingent upon the final engineering being sorted out between the staff. So at some point, when we have that final engineering, we'll be rendering that decision.
But we will see a decision.
Correct.
Is that everyone's recommendation of that night?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Moving right along. The next one is applicant George Heufelder, site plan review to construct a detached accessory apartment at 78 Oakwood. For the applicant, Mr. Heufelder, please come up. See you. Drag the mouse down the sidebar. Oop, oh, you got that, works too.
And you can just kind of advance
Sure.
this way, point it as it will work.
Sure.
Thank you and good evening. Glad to be back before you again. I watched carefully the meeting last time to sort of make sure I captured all of your concerns and the concerns of some of the abutters, or one of the abutters. And the other thing I should say up front is that on advice of the Zoning Board of Appeals Administrator, and since the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting was already scheduled and already advertised, we went forward with a meeting, an initial meeting with them, to which I presented the plan you'll see tonight, or you already have in your packets. And they voiced no objection to the plan and will probably just said they would wait for your approval of any of the architectural changes that have been made, and they had no further comments for me until I appear before them again this week. So just a quick review and a little bit of the review of the sort of characteristics or character of the neighborhood. You remember last time when I sort of felt that the character of the neighborhood might be displayed by the outbuildings that were there. Showed you a number of outbuildings, and I think I have some in your packets also. But there was more of an emphasis as I left, at least the flavor I got was that it should appear more like the architecture in the house. So you will see in your packets a little bit more display of what is in the house and some of the elevations of things in the house. There was some discussion last time of the entranceway, that it didn't look like my front door, and indeed it looks like sort of the side door, which this is the side entrance to the house. There's an addition off the back of the house, and that's where those skylights are, and you can see the window placement and the elevation of that sort of peak that shelters one going into the house is about 14.6. That's about 6 inches off of what the peak of the proposed addition is, or the proposed accessory apartment. The house itself, 19 feet high. And this is the infamous driveway that will be going back toward the apartment in the back, or the accessory apartment in the back. And I think last time I was misinformed you that I had like a 1 foot setback to my neighbor's driveway. It's more like 3 feet. It's more like 32 to 38 inches. And that sort of setback will probably be maintained all the way back to the driveway. So it isn't a 1 foot setback, it's 3 feet in the vegetation there. I wish these were in color, because I have a PowerPoint presentation that I could put up, which would, could I do that?
Sure, if you have it.
Would there be time for that? Because it's a little bit prettier in color.
Actually, we like it.
Thank you for your indulgence on that.
I think it's 6 inches.
Color says it all. Ever since The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
That's 3324.
He's doing the same math. I got you both doing it.
I'll give you a copy of that.
That comes out, it's,
Yep.
right here,
Go to
20.
this sheet.
You want
I
that?
got
PowerPoint.
She's got it suggested. We're supposed to be doing outside dimension, though. We'll just make it shrink it 6 inches, and
Nice lot.
you're right. It hasn't.
But, we need to discuss.
We can decide amongst ourselves.
I think it's slideshow
It's, we're
from
not
beginning.
constrained by any measurement system.
Slideshow from beginning, yeah. Okay, so that's the house as it is right now. Couple skylights in the front, windows. My domestic engineering informed me last time, and I was incorrect that those were 6/6. They're just plain windows. The proposed plan, of course, you have this before you in a blue stamp plan from the surveyor, but is to put the accessory apartment in the back, get rid of all of the sheds, and maintain, in fact, I presented before the Zoning Board of Appeals, there'll be no variance for lot coverage on it. So the lot coverage is just at 20%. So on the last board meeting, there was an objection to the architectural style, and it was not in harmony with the character of the neighborhood. The dimensions exceeded 800 square feet on the outside,
Okay.
but the internal space was 770. The abutters' objection to the possible intrusion of headlights, that being the rear abutters, the voiced objection to concern about an electrical pole, objection to the presence of any accessory apartment. Of course, that was discussed a little later, and again, I'm grateful to the town of Falmouth to let us age in place or continue our journey, as I like to put it. And the next door butter submitted a letter in favor. There was one read into the record for objection, which was not a direct abutter. Response: I changed the architectural style, which you'll see and we can go over. Bylaw seems to indicate the floor space requirement is less than 800 square feet, or 40% of the existing dwelling. And I think in my initial paperwork, the existing dwelling, 40% of that would be 814 square feet, but I'm tacked to the 800 square feet maximum on floor space, but we really will have 770. The proposed extension of fencing will Fencing that's already in place will hopefully shadow any of our headlights, and I'll show you some of that. We'll likely bring all utilities underground, there was some objection to possibly having to bring a pole back there.
Excuse me,
Yes,
are you gonna put them underground or aren't you?
we will put them underground. We're
You
not
said
gonna,
likely, I wanted to be a little clearer.
we will put them underground.
Thank you.
I can't see why we would hang them
Okay.
on a pole. And the board reiterated the purpose of the bylaws. You remember there were some folks who objected to it altogether. Some of them had not understood your restriction, which is the owner must live there and submit an annual affidavit. And there's probably still objections to this bylaw, but by the fact that there is a bylaw, I would sort of say we have at least a right to come before you and request one. So the architectural review, here's neighborhood accessories and a review of a primary structure. The neighborhood accessories, this is what I see out my front door. He's in renovation of that, which is basically a wood shop. That's directly across the street. This is a view from my backyard to the accessory building across the street from me, sort of catty corner. This is my direct abutters accessory building, which is basically a wood shop. This accessory building 2 doors down on, no, this is on Nursery Road. I see this out my front door if I stand in front of my house. This is on Nursery, not too far from me. This is on 64 Oakwood Ave, which is a couple doors down from me, and you'll note the skylight and roof pitch and everything there. But this is our present house. 14.6 on the peak to the side door entrance, and we'll probably be right about that, maybe 6 inches higher on the entire peak of for the accessory apartment. Proposed structure will have similar skylights. That's the back of the house. This is the driveway, and again, I have about a 3-foot setback, and we'll probably maintain at least a 2.5-foot setback all the way back, because I have a garden back there that I've used in the past for stormwater. It's really a bamboo garden that's contained inside of a liner, bulletproof liner, because bamboo knows no bounds. So this again,
Just a second, you have a question?
yes,
Can you go back to the next?
sure. This
I
one,
think you said that porch area is coming out, is that correct? The last meeting, did you say that porch area was taken out?
no, the
Deck in the
porch
rear.
in back is being taken out.
Deck in the rear is coming off.
The deck in the rear, right. That was there when my dad lived there. We had to have a little, because of handicap. He had one leg. Okay, so this is, again, you have the plan on this and a revised plan showing all the appropriate setbacks and lot coverage was submitted to the ZBA when I went before them. And this is the revised architectural style. This has, a 7-pitch roof. Pretty simple design. It doesn't have the complex roof that you saw before with the shed and then a cutout front. Skylights in the front, again, for lighting. I had originally gone over some designs with 42-degree pitch because of solar panels in our sort of latitude 42 would have hit it right on the nose. But to drop the height of it and to make it less obtrusive and to blend in with the rest of the house so that this would be really, it's no taller, it's only 6 inches taller than the side entrance door to my house. This is the backyard as it is right now, and I know that's difficult to see superimposed, and it's not even properly, totally scaled
Nice
right.
try, though.
That's very helpful.
So this is about the aspect one would see from in front of my house. They will see that much of it, and I believe on the elevations of that, since the house, that peak elevation there is 14.6, the other one will be actually just a little bit taller than that. This will have the blending effect that you talked about. It will look like something wrapped around and coming in behind my house. Same windows, same type of entrance door that could be seen, but it will only be 9 feet high, that particular entrance door. So the abutters had some concerns about headlights. So these are the abutters. It would be at least the direct abutter behind me, and Joe is here tonight, so I'm sure he'll have something to say about it. We plan on extending the fencing. There is already a 6-foot fence there, and I will not attach to that fence. There's a nice tree right in the corner of our lots, so I'll bring that in closer to the house and shield it, and I'll show you what's planned. So that's about the area. See, there's a squeaker hole in there that has a little fencing across it, keeps the chickens from going in there. And this is what it would look like. I mean, there's, as I said, 30 to 36 inches, and we'll carry that pretty much all the way back because there's a rainwater garden back there of bamboo, and that will go right back beside the accessory apartment. The 6-foot high fence will match the abutters fence, but again, will not attach to it. Will be well within our property line. In fact, probably right off the end of the house, giving some room for us to walk around the house, but it will be close to where the truck will be parked, or where my car will be parked, and I'll drive a truck till they tuck me under the sod, or I can't drive anymore. The other fence on the side, it will look something like this with plantings that will match our plantings in the house. We use either Euonymus, you see that picture in the lower right-hand corner is my backyard, and the Euonymus we plant there, or some other variegated plant. Doesn't require a whole lot of sunlight because there won't be as much sunlight in that back corner of the house. It's shielded by the neighbor's house, it's shielded by the neighbor's garage, and it's shielded by one enormous, looks like a fir tree, which we're hoping not to even have to trim that fir tree at all to put because it's a very nice tree. So I went over your bylaw. The accessory apartment shall have no more than 2 bedrooms. This will have 1. Maximum 800 square foot of floor area, 40% of the floor area of the existing dwelling. 40% of the existing dwelling is 814, which of course we will be held to the 8. And in looking at it and asking when the advertisements for your hearings, they were held on, publicized 9/5 and 9/7, hearing on 9/25. My application was in on August 2nd. So I'd ask for some consideration that this is under your older bylaw and just save some lumber cuts.
You want to save the 14 feet, is what you're saying?
Yes. So this is pretty much the layout that we proposed, but even if this wasn't the layout, the internal walls would not put this even close to 800 square feet internal. If we made one big thing, you'd have to subtract the 6 inches of the exterior walls. So, and that's my story.
Thank
Would
you.
you like to go back to just leave this on the old design, the design? I mean, that was the focus of last time's discussion.
Do you have this, leave it on this sheet right here?
Yes.
That would be good. I think this is a really great, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Does anyone in the public have any comments? Please step up, identify yourself.
Joe McGuire, a butter to the rear, and great improvement, George. My still heartache is the cars parked back there. I don't find a house near the back of a lot with parking on it in our neighborhood, as I described the neighborhood a couple of weeks ago. So I think that kind of violates the spirit of your agreement, but it's certainly a great improvement. I think you're putting 2 houses in a one-family zone. We're playing words, we're wordsmithing when we say accessory apartment. That's a house. And I think it, again, violates the spirit of this discussion and the idea of an accessory apartment. To me, it looks like a second house in a two-family zone. Thanks.
Could I make one comment on that? As far as the parking, I think of the two abutters, of course, Joe would be the most aggrieved. And I would definitely, you know, if I have to build a mountain there, I'll build a mountain to keep that from happening. But I would like you to just consider one thing that we saw on there, which was the map of those who would be right here. This is the one. The blue shaded area where the abutter is, and you see that little outbuilding back? I'd have to differ with Joe, because that car and that driveway comes up around that house, in between the house and the thing, and the outbuilding there. And actually, I'm surprised you could stand it, because that car today was parked, pointed right at your house. So I don't know whether in neighborhoods that that's a consideration of where I park my vehicle, whether I park it back there or in front of a house, or inside of a house. But I'm pretty sure I could go around my neighborhood and see where people have parked in behind their house, not even beside it. Joe parks beside it.
Anyone else from the public?
Joe McGuire again. I forgot when I was up. How are you going to
All
accommodate the
questions-
needs?
Joe, all questions need to come to the
Gotcha.
board.
How would George propose to accommodate the unfortunate possible chance of getting a fire truck back there or an ambulance? Just as a, you know, a social concern. I had a gravel driveway for years in another house, and they're pretty, but they're a pain.
Looks like it come down the existing driveway and just keep right on
Can it
going.
handle the weight? Did the fire guy get involved in the zoning part of
No,
this?
not really.
'Cause
We do on commercial
gravel
property.
driveways get muddy in a hurry
Yeah,
and really junky in the winter.
yeah.
Takes years of refilling them until they kind of are solid. And I would throw that up as a committee thing, really, to ask about anybody that's gonna have a driveway that's a little longer than normal and not blacktop.
Okay,
Same way, you know, if you're gonna put the emergency truck back there, God forbid somebody falls. But tie that back to your aging in place or living in place. Invariably, many of us fall when we get up there, and you gotta get the
I
ambulance
believe the
in.
non-paved issue is actually not our board. That
Gotcha.
goes to the zoning board of appeals, and that is in their purview and not ours. But we will make sure we'll talk
Okay,
about that.
well, is there going to be a zoning meeting?
There was a zoning meeting
Well.
as advertised, and
I missed it, I'm sorry, yeah. Is there gonna be a zoning
It's
meeting?
happened, yes.
I blew it then. I left here thinking we were
Right.
canceling it.
They
No
had-
problem.
They had already scheduled it, so it went ahead, but I would like to say, at least as far as I'm concerned going forward, that we don't do the two meetings, okay? Because the last thing I want to do is have an applicant came and say, well, it's already been approved by zoning, you know what I mean? I think they should be sequential.
They continued it.
They continued it, so it's still open, but we don't want to encourage them to go there first and try to have back, because that'll just, they should wait to hear what we say before they get going. I mean, that's really important.
If I may just comment in general on that, similar instance where I worked previously, there's an application date and people can apply whenever they want. What I would suggest to the applicant when I was counseling them in a pre-admission session is to file with the planning board who did site plan, and then the ZBA about a week later, just to kind of have that bit of a stagger. You have to advertise those things, typically that sort of offset a little bit, gives time for the board to have that meeting prior to the ZBA.
I would like to keep this moving, we've got a busy night. As far as the architectural effect of a single-family home, we all there? I'm talking this question for board members right now. Anyone agree or disagree with that?
I agree with it. I want to thank Mr. Hielfelder, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, for making such an effort to pay attention to what we had asked. You have really made
Thank
a
you.
good and successful effort as far as I'm concerned. I am reading the way you've drafted the elevations, that you're matching the materials so that this orange line stuff is actually intended to be shingles left to weather.
Yes,
Right. Now, the-
cedar.
So it will have the appearance of a single-family home.
I myself think if it wasn't for the 18 feet, we could use this for a perfect model.
Well, please feel free to do that and just chop off whatever you need. I'll give you the.
No,
other.
Pat pointed out that our new bylaw is going to address the measurement from the outside,
Yes.
but
I
our
understand.
existing bylaw goes from the inside, so you're all set.
I don't see that. I don't see that at all. It wasn't specified in our existing bylaw. That was a misinterpretation.
Misinterpretation.
By the zoning
Well,
board.
good.
Because if you, when we were looking at that bylaw, it's the sum of the gross horizontal areas of all floors of all buildings on the lot measured from the exterior faces of the walls. Section 24038, the footprint of any
Good.
accessory building is
Can you lose the,
from the outside.
can you get it to 18 feet? I mean, 800 feet.
We go to 33 feet on the length, I just waste a little lumber.
I think in that case, then we would have no objection or comment, and this could be used. I don't think I've ever seen anyone that's done as good a job as putting it forward and addressing all the issues.
Oh, thank you
So that
very
would
much.
be, it would be really good if you could do that for us.
If that was a condition on the approval, I would like to just make one quick comment on the zoning board of appeals. They were very careful not to indicate that that was any type of approval. And
Yeah.
I asked their indulgence only because we had advertised and everything.
My comments were not based on your hearing. We've had other hearings where that has been used.
Thank you. I understand is serving boards for a number of years.
Right.
How they play one board against
Bob has
another.
something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to address the parking issue.
Yes,
And besides driving through a neighborhood or walking around a neighborhood, I like to Google Earth a neighborhood, and there's parking behind a lot of these houses, and driveways that go in behind and all that, so
I know.
I don't see
Thank you.
where, the way you've got your parking designed is an issue as far as I'm concerned,
Thank
based
you.
on what I've seen in that neighborhood. And as far as emergency vehicles and all that, we don't require a cul-de-sac in someone's backyard.
Right.
You know, so,
And as far as neighborhood character, if there were an accessory apartment that was built in the last 40 years in this neighborhood, it'd be an illegal structure because they weren't allowed. So this is something new that we're creating, and the whole intent, when we understood that you won't find these anywhere because this is a new effort to allow people to age in place, and that's why
Continue their
you
journey.
can't go around seeing it because we're hopefully just creating them new.
yeah, and had this been an existing garage, like one of the neighbors in your neighborhood who did convert it to an apartment, this would be a perfect conversion from an existing garage, as far as I see.
Thank you.
Any other comments by any of the board members?
I have a question. Actually, there's not a wrong answer. This is just a question for my curiosity. We had talked, when you were here before, about making the windows match those of the main house, and they very nearly do, but they don't quite. The trim on the windows of your existing building abut the fascia strip above it, and these for some reason don't, and I wonder what your thinking on that was.
Well, if you take a look at the original, the first structure, the front of the house, yes, you're correct. But if you look at the side of the side house, where there are also two windows, they're different.
That's right.
So I more matched what was on the addition of the house going back as opposed to what would be on the front, which is tied right up to the fascia board.
Thank you.
So that was my reasoning. Don't know whether it was a good reasoning, but I flip a coin, front or side.
Okay? Paul?
Yeah, I just have a comment. The lot sizes on the north side of Oakview, as you know, are quite small. They're all the same as they go east-west. You do meet the lot coverage, and you do meet the maximum size based on the existing building, and I appreciate the fact you've tried to accommodate us very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Motion to close?
So, okay, then I move that we close this, well, it's a site plan.
We don't close it, but
We don't close it.
take it under
We take it
recommendation,
under advisement.
under advisement, and,
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
sure.
I have again a scheduled hearing before the zoning board of appeals this week. Does your taking under advisement prohibit them from making any sort of judgment?
This is what I was trying to avoid.
I understand. I'm sorry. I
We'll leave it up
apologize.
to
I don't
them.
know the process.
They can watch the hearing, they can read the minutes, they can call up, whatever. I'm not gonna answer that question.
Okay,
If
so
If I may just ask, when is your hearing,
This
continued
week.
hearing with the board?
this week, this Thursday?
Chairman?
Excuse me.
Is it possible that we could have Tom draft a decision, a positive motion that the ZBA could use as guidance? With
We're
the,
supposed to give them a referral, that would be a perfect
I'd be
referral.
happy to do that if that's fine with the board.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you very much.
That's, because anyway, that's great, thank you.
So-
All right, we got a lot to do tonight.
Can I
you
just
very
get one clarification about, so we are changing the exterior
He's
size
gonna
of
lo
the building?
800 square feet, he said he can do it.
the exterior
The
footprint.
exterior footprint.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, for being insistent on that. I was gonna let it go. Okay. Where are we next here?
Well,
Jerry Rogers.
Notices,
Oh, Town of Falmouth.
notices.
Notices.
Ready?
Yes, go ahead, read them.
This one here. That guy. Yeah, I know, it's very simple. I don't know what they.
is that, this, that one?
Mr. Chairman, the notices for the public meeting at 744 Main Street was published on 9/21/18, and 12 abutters were notified by regular mail.
Okay. The next one is public discussion, Town of Falmouth site plan review to reconfigure and reconstruct parking spaces at 744 Main Street.
Mr. Chairman, with us this evening is the design team for the senior center.
Okay.
They will walk you through the plans that we had previously discussed in a conceptual meeting.
This package.
I think, bear with me, I think one of my files isn't supported, so. Good evening, my name is Taria McGrail with Coastal Engineering, and also with me tonight is project architect Joel Bargman from BHA. So we're here before you tonight to amend the site plan permit that was issued last year for the parking lot improvements to the Gus Canny area, Falmouth Senior Center, and also the police station area. And so now the plans that you received and have before you include the fully developed Falmouth Senior Center building. And I guess what I'll start to do is walk you through kind of the site overview, the layout of the facility, just to so you can familiarize yourself with what we're doing with the site parking and also the circulation. So I'm gonna start right over in this area. I apologize, I forgot my pointer this evening, but hopefully you can see this mouse. So what I want to do is just start by introducing you to the various curb cuts and the access coming onto the site. The first one's going to be a new curb cut, and this was on the plans previously submitted last year and approved. It's going to be a right turn only entrance, and it's going to provide circulation from Main Street into the site. And then the next curb cut is going to be the existing one, and it's going to be improved. Let me see if I can slide over there. And what we're doing in this area is we're proposing, similar to previously, it's going to become a two-lane in and out. And we're going to go to 3 lanes so that you can have a dedicated left turn exit lane. So that's what's going on here. Now, what has changed from your previously approved plans is that the layout of this curb cut coming in has been shifted slightly, just a few feet, so that it's located wholly on the town of Falmouth's property. So that's what's happened here, and that's really the majority of the change in that area. Over in this area, we've improved the access in that area, provided you with the 3 full lanes that I previously mentioned. We have a sidewalk coming out that's about 5 feet wide, and what we've done is we've tied it into the new circulation pattern for the parking lot. So in response to comments received, I believe earlier in the year, there was a request to add some new angled parking so that it was easier for visitors to come and go from the Falmouth Senior Center facility and also Gus Canny. So up in this area, you can see that this whole front row has now become angled spaces, and this will be a one-way approach coming through here. The benefit of the one-way approach is that when vehicles come into the site and come around, they're going to be able to drop off their passengers if they would like, and that's going to be a fully ADA accessible drop-off area. But then they can pull in and park, or there's accessible parking there too. Now, one of the nice improvements of the Falmouth Senior Center is that this whole area is going to become in compliance with ADA requirements. And when you go to the Gus Canny Center today, you'll notice that you go up a few steps. So the Falmouth Senior Center, one of the goals of the facility was to lower the site so that you have an easy access going into the site from the same grade as the parking area. So the Falmouth Senior Center is actually going to be 2.5 feet lower than the Gus Canny is today. So we're going to have this improved circulation through here. Visitors can either drop off or they can park. And then the routes of egress will either be coming through here and exiting the site, particularly if they're taking a right. But another route of egress from the site is going to be to circulate around back. And we'll have a new curb cut going out to Dillingham Avenue. And that was on the previous set of plans that was issued by Tetra Tech as well. So this third egress that I'd like to talk about is the one out to Dillingham Ave. And that's going to be one way. The majority of the parking in this area is probably going to be most likely employees. And the benefit of encouraging folks to exit out this way is that Dillingham Ave is much lower volumes of traffic. So vehicles can easily exit out Dillingham. And now I'm going to flip to the next page so that you can see how the vehicles will exit, head out to Dillingham Ave. And I'd like to just point out a few of the improvements in this area that do vary from the previously approved Tetra Tech plans. And mostly what that includes is similar to what we've done on the Main Street side. What we've done is we've shifted the layout slightly so that this exit and this curb cut is located wholly on the town of Falmouth's property. And then we'll be
You
looking,
said that before, was it previously on the abutters property?
it was previously just cutting the corner, going over this side. So, with some improved survey information in that area, we've corrected that, and that's what's before you tonight. Let's see. So the proposed senior center building is about 7,800 square feet. As I mentioned, there's going to be a nice access between the two buildings, and that's gonna be underneath this roof canopy, and then there will be a ramp up here that goes into the Gus Canny Center so that the two facilities are connected.
Excuse me, can you show me that ramp again, please?
Sure. It's gonna be, so this is your main entrance into the senior center, and then
Okay.
where it says roof canopy,
Yep.
that's gonna tie into the existing Gus Canty
It's gonna go up
canopy.
2.5 feet.
Right into this canopy here that currently exists, and then we have a ramp that's gonna go up to meet the grade of the finished floor of the Gus Canny Center. So we can provide, so we'll have a fully accessible, wheelchair compliant ramp in that area.
So what is the material on either side of the proposed patio?
It's gonna be concrete sidewalks.
Sidewalks?
Mhm.
So that whole thing will be sidewalks with a patio walkway of stone in the middle of it?
This is a patio
Yep.
that's proposed.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be a seating area for people, using the senior center. And it's actually gonna have a fence around it so that there's some privacy for folks using the senior center. This walkway here is gonna connect through, and that brings up, one of the previous points that came up previously was providing access, back to the baseball field at the rear of the facility. So the main flow of pedestrian traffic is going to be, through this covered access between the two buildings, one of the main thoroughfares. So people parking up here for a baseball game will have access to walk through to get to the baseball field and not interrupt any folks that are sitting at the patio.
Jim,
Yes.
is it all right to ask?
Yeah, we were asking questions.
Yeah, to the left of the senior center, there's what appears to be a driveway. Could you describe where that driveway goes and what happens in the back of the building?
Sure, so this driveway shown is an existing driveway that's there today. It goes down, the police station is here, and there's the driveway that comes out of what they call the Sally Port from the lower side of the police station. This driveway here is going to connect with existing parking that is currently behind the Gus Canny Center. And we are proposing some improvements to this first row of spaces in that area. If you head this way, you'd head towards the gated access to the police station, the new improvements they've recently completed. But this will all be public parking.
Okay, and then, but it looks as if the Gus Canty Center does extend quite a bit. It's a much larger building out back. So can you get from the back of the senior center around to reconnect to the new driveway going out to Dillingham?
Nope,
No, you cannot.
steep hill there.
And that portion of the Gus Canny building will remain the same. So this parking area here is currently closed off. This is the limit of the parking area. So anyone parking in here will have to come back out and around.
Thank you.
If I could just follow in on that, Jim.
Yes, Paul.
On the original map, it shows the 10 parking spaces in that area is not to be disturbed. This one doesn't show it. I presume it's still there. There's 10 handicap parking spaces by the basketball court there.
By the back.
It's outside the limits. I presume they're still there, although it does not show in this drawing.
Yeah, we're actually not proposing any changes to that
Okay, it's shown
stretch
previously,
of parking.
but not here, okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing, to get in to that area, you have to go through the entire parking lot in front of the building to be able to make that right-hand turn, as I see that. Is that correct?
You would, yes.
Thank you.
Yes?
Oh, well, one final thing, if I can. You have a utility easement coming out from the middle of the parking lot there. Obviously, the water's buried. Is the electrical buried there, too?
It's going to be all the utilities coming in from that area.
Be on poles?
Water, electric, sewer, telephone cable.
Okay. Why don't they just bury the electrical and burying everything else?
That's what you just said.
It will be buried.
Oh, will be buried? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Pam?
So one of my concerns that I had expressed was, this is a very large parking area, and I had thought there would be room, even if we had to sacrifice a couple of parking places, to have some sort of a midway point in the middle of the drive to allow people to get out of their cars and have a safe passage, so people weren't walking every which way to get into the center. Because I think this is, my personal feeling is this is a prescription for disaster. These are seniors coming in and out, plus whomever else is using the Gus Canty Center, plus anyone who may be parking there to go to the field. And I see no safe way for people to traverse this parking area to get in, unless they're dropped off. But if they're not, they have to make their way. If they've got a walker and they're independent enough to drive, but they still have to navigate through automobiles going in and out. And I was wondering why you couldn't accommodate sort of safe passage from the front right into the front of the senior center.
So would you be looking through the entire, a quarter through the middle of the parking area?
At
or-
least from, not counting the diagonal, 1, 2, at least the first 3 sets of parking spaces.
Mhm.
And somebody was gonna look into, I think Corey or Tom,
I'd be happy to address it when recognized.
Good. We'll see if we recognize you.
I'll see if I like your response, and otherwise I'll just,
No, you done?
Go ahead.
'Cause I'd like to add
You
to
go
that.
first, yeah, you go first.
Yeah, I agree with Pam that there should be a painted crosswalk going up through there, because people in town recognize that they have to stop or slow down when there is a crosswalk. Because I can just see someone darting out from behind a car that's parked, and a lot of people have SUVs that are a lot taller than a lot of us. And I think people need to be able to slow down if they have that painted pavement, like the bike paths that cross the roads. It's a warning to drivers to be aware that there are pedestrians coming through there. And if you choose not to use it, then you're on your own.
We've mentioned that before. Yes.
So, at a staff level, we had a number of discussions about the site plan and the review from the conceptual discussion. And one of the things we talked about in-house was amongst departments and amongst the design team as well, is about this potential for a pedestrian corridor through the parking field. The consensus of the group is that very few times do you see someone get out of a parking car and walk somewhere else on the parking lot rather than just making a beeline to the building, whether it's the grocery store or something else like that. So the consensus of the group is that you might put a crosswalk or a sidewalk in the middle of those spaces, lose those parking spaces we talked about, and really never have anyone use it. So the consensus of the in-house staff and the discussion about that was we benefit better by having the drop-offs there, the handicap spaces, and the place for folks to drop off, and assuming that they're using some sort of mode to improve their mobility, whether it's a walker or a cane or something like that, they're probably gonna have a placard on their car as well to take one of those over spaces. But it was the consensus of the group that putting that walkway through the middle of the parking lot would be relatively unused and just a loss of parking spaces when the premium was on trying to get people onto the site. The other discussion that we had about putting these parking spaces on a 45 or on the angled spaces, when you put the angled spaces in, you lose some parking spaces that you would have vertically. And so the design team was asking, well, how would the board feel about having a few less spaces than what the target was? And my advice to them was, I clearly heard from the board they wanted those angled spaces in that was the premium over having spaces that people would use versus having more spaces that people might not use. So that net effect of, I think it was 5 or 6 parking spaces, it sort of dropped off the plan. We angled those spaces, went away as well. So those are some of the in-house discussions that we had had.
I think that's an in-house discussion when you look at this plan with all these empty spots, but envision a car parked in every spot, and you're the last 5 people are coming in, they're gonna be the furthest away spots by the street. And those people are gonna have to walk all the way over here through the traffic pattern, all the way up here and all the way back there, as opposed to walking straight in. And I think if you envision cars parked in all those spots, and I'm guessing that the last spots would be the most furthest away, the last 5 people would have to navigate through this parking lot. Left, right, left, instead of going straight in. That was the concern I think we were
Well,
talking
that
about.
was part of my issue. The other is that you could have seniors at the same time there are young
Basketball
people who are
game.
driving to the Gus Canty Center. And I think that, again, is just horrid. And most seniors, if you talk to, people in their late 70s, 80s, their biggest fear is hitting a child. And when you have that mixture of adolescents and elderly people who are still able to drive, I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that we don't have a very significant accident. And I just don't know how in the same way, when you have a diagonal parking, it's easier to navigate out. When you have straight parking, it's far more difficult and confusing. And so I just have tremendous concerns about what's going to happen here. I mean, I have to tell you, I've talked to so many people in various organizations who say, I'm not going to go. I'm afraid it's too big, the parking lot is confusing. And, perhaps one day there could be an orientation for, how to get in and out and how to navigate. But I'm just expressing my concern that we don't have a safe passage.
Pat?
Looking at this, if we were to do a crosswalk, not starting here at the street, but sort of at the end of those, and going through, we'd be losing 4 more spaces, I believe. How many were lost by putting the diagonals in the first instance? Well, Tom said 5, 6, he wasn't.
Yeah, so the proposal in front of you includes 242 spaces, and previously we were at 250. If you look at the first row of spaces, you'll see that there's 24 spaces proposed. I believe the original plan had 35 spaces there, and we've really done our best to try to maximize around the site where we can squeeze another space in to make up for that deficit. But between angling the spaces and then also making sure that we have adequate maneuvering for fire vehicles, this is really the best we can do with providing the angled spaces and then trying to meet as many parking spaces as we can provide.
Okay, so we will, if we take away 4 more spaces, we will have lost 12 spaces then, total. You said
8 plus, yeah,
242,
12,
so it'd be two-
correct, yeah.
Okay. How many spaces would have been normally required that we are being forced to reduce because of size of the lot?
The previous approval was 250 spaces.
I understand.
We do have the benefit of the police station parking improvements. They've been able to pick up a few more spaces than they originally thought. So what that allows, it does allow a few more staff members of the police station to be parking at the rear of the police station rather than occupying spaces at the front of the site. So we could look at it from that perspective, that there's 5 more available to patrons of Gus Canty and the senior center, and then also the house at the front.
And you're not counting those in the
I have
numbers
not
you've
counted,
just given
no.
me, so.
So if you could look at it that way, maybe we're at 247, and then if you were to take, I wonder if we could take 3 away, because we do have some handicap. We could maybe route through one of the aisles for the accessible parking space.
That's kind of what I was looking at.
Yeah, so maybe we could do 3 spaces.
I was looking where you have those 33 circles. If you took those 3 out and have it tied in with the walkway of the handicap. I know, I park in this space to go to meetings at the Gus Candy all the time. And that's the way I would want to go. I would want to go straight forward as opposed to going all the way down here or down there and around, or around like that. I mean, once they're out of their cars, we're designing for people now that are unprotected by metal. And I think that's real important. John?
Jim?
I'll be back in a second. John?
I would support the safe walkways, but I drive in this parking lot many, many times during the week. There's a sidewalk on each side, and where do people walk? They walk right down the middle of this parking lot. And I see people, we have crosswalks on Main Street. I see people, they're 30 feet away from it. They don't use the crosswalk, they jaywalk between 2 cars. I see senior citizens park their cars, get out of the driver's door, and walk right across the street with all the traffic. We can design this any way we want. That doesn't mean that's the way people are gonna use it, and I think that's what Tom's and the staff was trying to say. If we can design all the safety we want, people are gonna take the shortest route possible, 99% of the time. I will support this, but
I'm thinking of putting the crosswalk as the shortest route possible is what I'm thinking.
might need about 15 or 20 of them here.
Charlotte?
I went down today to look through these with Tom, and a point that hasn't been brought out yet is the space between the double rows of parking spaces is 24 feet, which is the standard for that. So there's plenty of room to back up to use those, even though they're not angled. And I'd also like to point out, I think this is a good design because, in fact, getting in as many cars as you can comes to be more important for most of the uses of this space. And I agree with John, people are gonna walk where they want to. They do it all over town. And I bet all of us here have been to Walmart's, and that's the parking plan. People are used to it. That's the way it works, and I have not heard yet of fatalities at that parking lot at Walmart's. Maybe there have been some. But I
At
don't,
Walmart, though, the whole area in front of the building is a giant crosswalk, all with safety stripes all the way across. Here, we're parking right in that same area.
at Walmart, they're right in front of the building, and you could easily paint something in
Right.
front of the building without changing the layout of the parking spaces. Then you're talking paint.
So are you saying we don't need to have this crosswalk down the middle?
No, I don't think you need it. I think it's a
Okay.
waste of space.
John, you don't think we need it?
I don't think it'll get used.
Okay. I'm just taking a quick poll here, see to keep this meeting moving.
Yeah, I still think we should have it.
You
I do
definitely
too.
think?
I'm gonna split, because I don't think it's gonna get used, but I think it's our responsibility to provide safety.
That's
So you're
like,
saying you want it?
I'm gonna say exactly what I said. It won't be used, but I think our board's responsibility should be to provide safety, should people choose to use it.
And I agree with that.
I do too.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
I'd be happy with that. At least provide it and have people have the option to get out of their car and head toward a safe crosswalk rather than, and I agree with you, Charlotte, I'm a terrible jaywalker. I mean, full
Full
I'm not.
disclosure.
full disclosure.
I use these things. If they're provided, I use them.
Yeah, I use them
Well-
too.
And, you know, I'm always
Sometimes I
on
do.
use them.
Sometimes I do. I'm just very concerned because it's not just us who may be much more mobile right now,
See,
but for people who get out of their car, they have to go to their trunk, they take out their walker or whatever they may use, and then they have to navigate. And just being between 2 cars is tough enough. And I have witnessed my car being scratched by people taking their walker out and, they slam against the car because it is whatever it is. But I think I'd feel better if at least we provided that. If they don't use it, they don't use it, but at least, they have it.
See, I also look at it as a litigation point. If
That's true.
somebody, God forbid, gets hurt there, what are they gonna say? Well, you didn't provide any safe, and we can say, well, there was a safe, marked crosswalk there for people to use. It was your choice not to use it. So, I always look at the litigation possibilities of something. And like Pat said, we do base a lot of decisions based on safety. I mean, that's one of our major charges. And I think we should provide a safe access.
I'd
And if
rather
people
have it
use it
be
or
more
not,
safe than have more parking.
Me too.
Yeah.
Jim, one other thing, I also think this is about educating the seniors that are gonna use the senior center. You know, we've provided this so that when you leave your car, you can find safe passage to the front of the building. So please take advantage of that.
And I think this has come up at every time we've had a hearing. I think that you've heard this at least 3 times from us.
Chairman, I just wanted to make sure you didn't think the design team was ignoring you when it wasn't on the plan. I wanted to make sure you
No,
knew
we
that I was.
understand the pressures of parking
yeah.
spaces and wrestling with it and trying to do it and finding a way and squeezing
Just
10
want-
pounds into a...
Just making sure you know my fingerprints are
pound
all
bag.
over that lack of crosswalk, okay?
Okay, John, I have a question, if I may.
Yes.
If you look at the entrance on the lower right-hand side, coming in, right down the bottom there, that's one way going up. The town of Falmouth has paved that area to use that as an entrance area to that parking lot while they build the building. In other words, taking the left-hand side out of service. The way that's designed, it's only one way. Is that gonna be temporarily 2 ways and then converted back to 1 way after the left-hand side is redone?
The turn won't work at the
'Cause-
bottom.
Are you
I
looking
mean,
at?
how are you gonna go in and out of there,
Can't.
particularly with the curvature going,
Yeah.
making you go one way?
So the construction plan, part of it, what's been laid out, and it hasn't been awarded to a bidder yet, so we don't truly know the means and methods, but what's been recommended is that when work is being done here, a vehicle could enter through here, and that was part of the reasoning for getting that going early on in the process, but they could also go straight through out to Dillingham Ave. So that way, the real goal here is to keep all of these facilities open throughout construction of the senior center. So that was part of, so the thought on this is that it's an in only, and would stay an in only, and it would also only be a right-in.
So you'd have a no exit sign
No,
there and
yes,
an exit
yep.
sign at the other end.
So during construction, that's the only way in?
Well, only for a short period of time, which would be, this is gonna be open for the majority of the construction period, this main entrance here, but when the work does have to be done in that area, there could be some swapping between entrances with signage, but,
What's
So
my
you- so
understanding
you're only
is-
talking about
But
the
it would
work
be-
being done on that entrance.
yeah, I
Not-
mean, at some point, they're
okay.
gonna have to do the work here, and hopefully it's not an
Okay, so
extended period of
It's
time.
not during the entire building
Yeah,
process of the
And
construction.
perhaps, hopefully, the contractor can keep some of this lane open
Yeah.
so that we can have egress through there.
The other comment is, as you go out toward Dillingham, you have quite a few contour changes there. And it appears to me what you've done is try to smooth out that road going out, but does that require a retaining wall on the east side? Or can you just pick up that on the construction? If you look at it, there was a ridge going in, which is much higher, that has to be cut down. If you look at the topo.
Yeah.
I'm looking at drawing C2, 2.1.
Let me open that up. So we are trimming some of that grade, finessing it and feathering it
Oh,
right
right next
here.
to Gus Candy,
Oh, okay. Oh, there's quite a bit of topo there.
where
Yeah,
you're
we're
changing the
doing that.
contours quite significantly, right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, so at this point up here, we're holding existing grade, but yes, as you go down the hill and we propose parking.
It's quite steep there, now you seem to have
it-
smoothed that out a bit.
Yeah, the goal was to smooth it out as much as possible based on the natural topography. And also, we foresee that a lot of this parking would be used by employees and staff of the facilities that are able to. We'd like to see a majority of the parking of patrons of the facilities to be out front. And then this would possibly be employee use.
What about the drainage at that point, where does that go?
That's going to go into catch basins down at the low point. I'm adding a second catch basin, sized this facility so that it's adequate to handle the 25-year storm. So I also wanted to mention that one of the changes on this site plan is that you are seeing enhanced drainage that is sized per your town standards. So it's at the 25-year storm to capture and treat on site.
So that's designed to take everything up from the front of the building all the way to the low
No,
point?
this is only gonna take from about this crosswalk as a high point,
Yeah.
take everything in this
And that's
parking area.
designed to pick up all that runoff?
It is, yes.
Thank you.
And there's eight stormwater areas proposed in all. And going out towards Dillingham Ave, we've gone with more of a country drainage type layout, which would include a swale with a stone infiltration trench.
Is there any members from the public that have, this is a public discussion, any comments on this plan? What's our next step, Tom?
If the board is comfortable with the plan with the addition of the crosswalk, the board could vote to approve the plan contingent on the addition of the sidewalk. I just want to make sure we're clear on where we're at and where we're talking about that. That is essentially from that center double aisle to the parking building where the, you'd mentioned where the 33s are on the plan.
That's what I said, it seemed to be the middle, I just guessed at that. Is that,
Well,
Pam?
and I think, if I may, the designer has to put that crosswalk where there's a curb cut.
Right, you have to
Where
finish.
that crosswalk goes at is gonna be based on where the curb is at.
Well, I think actually it could work very well. We'd come across through
Yeah,
here.
that's what I was thinking.
This area is all flush at grade for a nice seamless transition. So I think this is a good solution.
My largest concern is when there's snow on the ground, and they come in to sort of plow whatever they can, but the cars
Right.
that are there during the day, if it's snowing,
Leave a wall.
I'm sorry?
They would leave a wall, I see what you're, sorry,
Yeah.
keep going. I agree with you.
So, I think that's the other reason for trying to make it as safe as possible.
I hear you.
I think it's a good compromise. We can give up a few spots to have safety,
I think so.
and I think that's really our job. So you have enough information, Tom?
I do.
All set? Everyone been heard? Let's keep moving, we got a busy night.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Jerry Rogers. Both these next ones, maybe not. Okay, applicant Jerry Rogers, site plan review for construction of a storage building at 689 Gifford Street.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Discussions with Mr. Rogers earlier today, he has not gotten his final plans prepared yet and requested a continuance until 27th. In order to finalize the plans and confer that the drainage is adequate.
The date we need?
27. I move that we accept Mr. Rogers' request to extend this until, the hearing date until the 27th of
I'm
October.
gonna change that if that's
It's the
okay.
23rd?
It's the
23rd? Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving right along. Applicant 39 Pine, Falmouth LLC, site plan review to construct a detached structure with an accessory apartment at 39 Pine Street.
Notice.
Notices.
Thank you.
I'm going to recuse myself. I'm going to
Go ahead.
recuse myself.
You can watch the TV if you want.
The public meeting notice was printed on 9/21/18, and 11 butters were notified by regular mail.
Got a disclosure? Yeah.
Just, I'd like to make the disclosure that Counselor Clower has represented my wife in a real estate transaction, but I feel that I can render a decision not influenced by that connection.
Anybody else? Okay,
Small town.
for the applicant.
Small Island.
What's your name, please?
Good evening, Kevin Clower. I'm an attorney here in Falmouth, and I represent the applicant, 39 Pine Falmouth LLC. I'm here joined tonight by Bill Poutre, who's the manager of 39 Pine, And this property is located between Pine Street and Old Main Road in North Falmouth, with frontage on both streets, actually. Contains just north of 35,000 square feet, and the applicant is seeking permission to construct a new single-family dwelling as well as a detached accessory structure. Presently, this lot contains a stable, which is an allowed use under the residential B zoning. He's seeking to replace that structure with an accessory structure of similar size in addition to the primary dwelling. While these are two separate structures, they're designed and located on the lot in such a manner as to present as one single-family structure as you look at it from the street. Essentially, no matter where you're looking from, all you will see, if you're looking from this direction or looking from this direction, all you would see is essentially one building. And our thought process was that in doing so, it had the look and feel of a single-family structure, more so than perhaps two detached dwellings would typically appear. The accessory apartment does have floor area of less than 800 square feet, perhaps not under the new standard, but certainly as measuring floor area. We did not count the indoor-outdoor space, so there's some covered porches that were not counted towards that floor area. I understand there was some discussion, perhaps within the planning board office, as to whether or not, as to the nonconformity of this lot. And it does not meet the current residential B minimum lot size of 40,000 square feet. However, our zoning bylaw and the minimum lot size requirements does contain a footnote that states for residential B, the requirements don't apply to a lot that was shown in a plan endorsed by the planning board prior to April 1983. The plan that created this lot in its present shape was dated November 1985 and recorded with the land court in March of 1986. We're looking at tonight largely as an introductory matter. We anticipate there's going to be some questions or some current concerns and comments.
Kevin, can you go back up those dates could you restate that paragraph you just said?
Sure.
I didn't miss
Sure,
something.
so essentially, there was, I understand there was some discussion as
I
to,
know the date about the signed plan had to be signed by the planning board by what date?
1993, April 1993.
93, okay, I
Yes.
thought you said 83.
No,
and
93.
That's why I didn't see the math.
And you're
working.
going,
I got you.
that's an interesting fact to bring up. No, 1993,
I thought you said 83, and now I understand.
1993, and the plan was recorded with the land
Excuse me.
court in 1986.
I got
So
it now.
some 7 years prior to that deadline. So we're looking at tonight largely as an introductory matter. I anticipate there's going to be some questions and comments, and we're certainly looking to take in the full board's feedback and look to work with that moving forward. We do have a zoning board hearing being scheduled presently for next Thursday, the 18th, I believe is the date on that. And just going back to, I think, some of the comments in an earlier application, part of the problem is the wait time for some of the hearings, not necessarily planning, but some of the other boards can be quite lengthy, so you need to kind of get your foot in the door and get a date reserved as quickly as you can.
Yeah, I understand that, but, these are things that are going to be here for 50 years, and I don't think a week or two of getting it right is, in my opinion, I don't like it when we're going to two different boards
Sure.
at the same time. I'm very uncomfortable with it.
Well,
I know they need.
I'm not looking to have anything resolved by the ZBA.
I know, we have had other hearings where the applicant has made a point to say they've already approved by the ZBA, and they were using it on us, and that's what I want to avoid going forward.
Never me.
No, I said other applicants. I'm going to give a quick comment because I want to keep this moving. I don't think this has the architectural effect of a single-family home at all. I think it looks like two different homes, both with garages, with porches, and there's nothing that looks like the architectural effect of a single-family home. I totally disagree with it. I don't see how the mass and sizing of the garages and porches make it look like another single-family home. I'm gonna let the other board's member talk too, because we got a busy night here.
So, one of my issues with this from the very beginning is, I don't think that we should be allowing, encouraging, or doing anything else to say, if you own a house in Falmouth and it's on more than 7,500 square feet, just go ahead and build another house and we'll make it an accessory apartment. That's not what I want to see all over the town of Falmouth. I want to provide affordable housing for as many people as we can, but I don't think that means we should encourage people to just build another house on their existing lot. And I think this with its own access, 2 different accesses. Forget the garage, I don't think that was the intent either. And forget the screened-in porch, because I don't think that was the intent. Too easy to take that porch, convert it to a room, take the garage, convert that to more space, and then we've got 2 existing homes on one piece of land, which I don't think anyone in the town of Falmouth would like to see. So I think that needs a lot of work to make it.
So may I ask a quick question, ma'am? I know that there's a lot of talk of having structures that present as barns or as garages, but wouldn't that same concern be present in all of those?
I'm sorry, say that again, please?
I believe a lot of the drive is to have accessory structures that appear as garages or barns, or might be accessory above a garage or ancillary above a garage. But wouldn't that same concern be present in all of those situations? if
But
that
it's
was the
not
case?
present in this one.
It's definitely not, I mean, you want to build a garage onto an accessory apartment. You're not talking about taking an existing garage that may be separated from a building by, 4 feet or whatever, and converting that. You're talking about building a new mini house with a garage and a screened-in porch. That's like another house to me.
So just to flesh this out, if it was above a garage, so for instance, you had a 2-car garage with an accessory apartment above it, as opposed to next to it, does that change the analysis? And I'm not trying to be snide at all, but I'm trying to understand.
If my garage is attached to my home, if I built up on that garage, I'm not building a separate home on a separate, with its own grass, a screened-in porch, and a garage. It's not the intent of this bylaw, as far as I'm concerned.
I don't think it meets the architectural
None.
effect of a single-family home, period.
Exactly.
So, what I'm
This
trying.
plan, not any
No,
other plan.
I understand,
Not
but I'm
debating
trying
garages,
to understand,
this
just
plan.
for moving us forward, as we do revise plans. So for instance, if we had a 2-car garage with an accessory apartment above it,
What's your question?
is that more in line, would you feel that that was more in line with the presentation of a single-family home? As opposed to, right now, we have a 2-bedroom
Yes.
apartment next to a garage as opposed to above a garage.
No, not on this property, because the main house is proposed to have a 2-car garage. So why would you be building another 2-car garage over there all by itself, with an entrance from a different street?
I mean, I think lots of people have more than 2-car garages, especially if they like
I think the
2-car
key
cars
point,
or and
key
there's any
point
number
is
of
the
reasons.
architectural effect
Right.
of a single-family home. It doesn't have it. That's the fundamental part of this. You've worked your way around it, trying to make it happen. But that's the beginning of this bylaw, is that we didn't, when it has to have the architectural effect of a single-family home. And to me, looks like 2 homes on 2 different streets with 2 garages and porches, and I don't see anything accessory, period.
And mirror images of each other, too.
So
So it does distinctly look like another house. And, I mean, I know exactly what Pam is saying, because when I first looked at this, I thought, wait a minute, a 1.5-car garage on this? No, that's not an accessory, affordable apartment. Carport maybe, but not a 1.5-car garage. Screened porch? No. I've seen one right up the street that's probably being turned into a heated space right now. Easy beans to do.
So the rationale behind that is as an in-law space, and the accessory apartment being the in-law space, and providing them with some indoor-outdoor usage as well. I didn't see anything in the bylaw that would prohibit that, and thought that that would be a situation where, yes, you do have a smaller living area and a smaller or more affordable living area if it was being rented, but still have the benefits of an indoor-outdoor space.
you're missing the architectural effect of a single-family
No,
home.
I understand the concern. Yeah, I mean,
If you skip over that, anything goes.
so I understand the concern, and our thought process was, and we discussed this quite a bit internally, was as you look at either structure, all you would see from either direction is in fact one structure. So you're not seeing, from an overhead perspective, yes, of course, you're seeing the 2 structures. But as you're looking at it from Pine Street, or as you're looking at it,
Or from the next-door neighbor.
well, that's part of why we ended up going with the side-by-side approach, because the neighbors didn't want a 2-story structure. They didn't want a garage with a space above it. So we were trying to accommodate their concerns.
Well, you got some feedback. Anyone have more feedback for him?
I would say the same thing you're saying.
Anybody else?
To the drawing board.
It's way too massive to be considered accessory.
What?
It's way too massive to be considered
Looks
accessory.
like another house to
It's
me.
not just the mass, it's the detailing and also.
Mhm.
Mr. Chairman, I think the applicant would like to speak for a moment if we
Sure.
can.
Hi, my name is Bill Poutre, and I live on 105 Cobblestone Lane in North Falmouth. The purpose of the second structure was for that of an in-law. It's 800 square feet is what the structure was. The intent, if you look at the structure that's there right now, the stable, it's meant to look like there's a garage. I have pictures of it here. It's meant to look like you're looking at a garage. I spent the time to speak to the abutter and asked what would she like, and what she felt the need was in the town. And it's meant to be exactly that, an in-law piece where, you know, you have parents that are maybe in Florida for 6 months out of the year that come home and have a place that's small, an 800 square foot apartment. That's the point behind it. We tried to make the architecture look like something that really fit within everything else that was there in the neighborhood. That was our reason, that's our purpose. I'm certainly open to any thoughts that you have on how you might want, we'd better suit it, we'd better design it, whatever you'd like. But the purpose is for an 800 square foot apartment. That's what it's for.
We did not see people putting in accessory garages on their accessory apartment, accessory porches on them, and having separate driveways. This was not something that we envisioned at all. I understand how you got there, and you're trying to make it into something that's good, but I think you gotta start off with the beginning of our bylaw, and I keep saying the architectural effect of a single-family home. This does not, right there, look like a single-family home with an accessory apartment at all. It looks like two houses, period.
So I guess I'd be looking for a suggestion of what,
That's not our job.
okay,
We don't have time
Okay.
to do that tonight.
okay. All right.
Well, I guess I also have a question. You're the owner. Are you planning to move there?
I don't know, it would be, right now, is an in-law is what the expectation would be for my in-laws. to
But our
move in.
bylaw requires that whoever owns it
Without a question.
lives there. So what I'm hearing is that, in a way, you're building it speculatively right now.
No,
You're not saying you're gonna
Will your
move.
in-laws be owning the building?
I don't know for a fact.
Bylaw requires the owner to live on site.
Whoever, there will be an owner living in either of
Either
these
one,
properties.
right.
I mean,
That's
that's a condition of the deed, and that's something that we understand. But
Yes,
that,
Pam?
presumably, we get to build it.
In 1998, we moved my parents up from Florida to have an in-law apartment, and we added on to our existing home because we didn't want to have to go anywhere to help them out. And
Exactly right.
the reality is they were turning 90, they were still driving, they were still independent, they were still traveling. But that, to me, doesn't look like an in-law apartment. And maybe we need to look at a new bylaw that has in-law apartment versus an affordable housing accessory apartment, because I think they're two different issues. I think if you were living in that other house and you were adding on for your in-laws, it's very different than what we're looking for in increasing workforce housing and having affordable housing. And I have no issue, trust me, my parents lived with us for 8 years. But this is not what I look at as,
You've accommodated 2 garages, 2 private yards, 2 decks, porches. It looks like 2 separate and
separate homes.
distinct, not an accessory. That's the,
Well, in the definition, it says, notwithstanding an additional dwelling unit subordinate in size and accessory to the principal dwelling on the lot, located in either the principal or accessory. And when you look at the plot plan, this is much bigger, the footprint of it is bigger than the primary residence. And that isn't what we,
No, it's not.
it says proposed building here.
The single-family
is the
home is
proposed
the one that's on Pine
Okay.
Street.
But even so, the screen
Oh,
porch,
okay.
garage,
Okay, so I saw proposed building here. Okay.
Lose the garage, make it smaller, put it closer to the back of the house. You know, anytime we've seen these in any other areas, they're really close to the main house. You know, it's very clear. This one is not, to me, it looks like a totally separate, not related at all.
And I certainly understand the concerns, and I appreciate your feedback tonight, and we welcome the chance to come back to you at a later date. What I would, we do need to revise our plans, certainly, there's no question as to that. And we're obviously not looking for denial, and I'm just trying to determine if we're better off having kind of a lengthy,
Mom and Dad would not be able to walk
Right.
to
No.
come visit you in the house. You got it too far away.
It's 30 feet between the buildings.
Mom and
So-
Dad, my mother's 90, I have to hold her hand, okay? I would think that you only have a couple of feet to get them in and out. I'm not saying, but that's an extreme, but that's what we envisioned, that it would be for that.
So I guess what I'm trying to determine, Mr. Fox, is whether or not we are better off looking at a withdrawal without prejudice or looking at a continuation that would just be a little bit longer.
We have no trouble
I'd
continuing
I'd prefer
for
just to have a continuation if the planner's okay with it.
whatever you need. We want to encourage
There's
this.
a continuation is fine. What time,
I mean, I think we
what
need,
timeframe are we looking at?
I mean, we
for-
need some time to revise our plans, I think. So I think realistically, we're looking at
We'll get to that.
a month or more.
But not tonight.
Just bringing my calendar up.
Perhaps we could set a date, mid-November, and then assess where we are leading up to that.
Sagan Court.
Jim, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, we're trying to achieve the look of a single-family home. Our bylaw doesn't say anything about, the two structures need to be in relationship to one another, but it doesn't really specify a distance apart. So we're not intending to add something that isn't in the bylaw here. We're wanting him to change the effect,
Extension.
really, of the
Yeah.
mass.
Right.
It's too big a mass to look at, and it doesn't appear to be accessory to the main building. It appears to be one house and one cottage that happen to be on the same lot. So it's really about the massing and the design, rather than the spacing.
and access from different streets.
The
and-
access
Well,
from the different
I'm not sure there's much we can do about the
accentuates
access
the
from the
separateness.
different streets, mainly because the lot doesn't provide enough room for access past the house from either direction.
These things aren't going to fit everywhere.
No, I understand, but I think, when you have two natural frontages, I don't see, there's certainly nothing in the bylaw saying you could not have two driveways.
I'm going to
There-
speak for myself, not for the board, but if that house didn't have a garage and was brought much closer to the main house and even had a driveway going out the back with a parking space out there, so it wouldn't be, I could go along with that. It would look to me like an accessory structure. It doesn't look like an accessory structure to me at all.
You could make it seem accessory by using the driveways. If the driveway came off of Old Main Street rather than Pine Street, the driveway for both of them, so that they actually join together between the buildings to go in and out of one another's buildings that way,
Well, the
then they would
garage-
appear related. But now they don't appear related.
No, I appreciate that feedback, Ms. Harris. It's very helpful. And it's some good points. I don't want to take up more of the board's time than we have to, because I'd like to watch the Red Sox Yankees at some
Did you see
point.
the meeting beforehand, the
I
way
did,
that,
I did.
that was perfect for us?
But that was two separate and I get
Two separate structures.
two separate structures
this-
and presents as one as you look at it. So we were actually quite encouraged by that.
Right.
And so we said, well, that's two separate structures, and as you look at it, what you see is one structure. And as we looked at this, we said, well, as you look at it, you see one structure. So I was encouraged by that. But I understand, but I understand the concerns, Mr. Fox. And I think we can make some modifications to improve the plan and come back to you at a later date.
And as to that later date, as our assistant town planner just pointed out, we've got a clock ticking on this with the deadline of November 26th, so you need to.
I'm happy to agree to extensions.
If you put that in writing and
I'd be
and
happy
file
to.
it with us in
Yep.
the town clerk's office, to make sure everyone's clear that
Yep.
there's an extension and we don't burn daylight. So that just means, what date would you want to meet?
Well, I know,
I'm gonna look in November in my crystal ball and say November 6th is election day.
Yep.
November 13th is town meeting. Those are probably not nights we're gonna be talking about stuff.
No.
So that puts us in November 27th.
Sounds like Thanksgiving.
it's after Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's the 23rd, I think, it's,
Correct.
so,
22nd.
27th would be fine by us.
Can I ask just one quick
Sure.
question? Can I ask why that says proposed building?
Because we're building both of them. Neither exists
Let's give it
presently.
22nd.
Neither exists now.
Neither exists presently.
And you've got the
Thanksgiving, the 22nd
possibilities
of November.
really wide open for how the buildings are sited.
No, and we're,
I'm looking there, you could go off of Pine Street and have the driveway go right beside the main house and service,
There's a lot of options.
yeah.
You have a lot of options.
Not our job.
This should not
I
be
know
one of
it's
them.
not our job, but there are a lot of options with both buildings being built right now.
Well, it's our first instance of this.
You got enough? We got an awful lot to do
no,
tonight.
I'm good.
We're gonna continue till November 27th, and Mr. Flower is going to write a official request to continue. So we're not at
I'll have that submitted
any
to you
risk of any
tomorrow.
sort of constructive improvement.
Great, thank you, guys.
Okay, now we're gonna,
Okay, I move that we go back to the planning board discussion of the zoning articles for fall town meeting.
I second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, so the first is Article 6, Coastal Pond Overlay District.
If I may?
Yes.
I've got the slides.
Now, public hearing is over, and this is a planning board discussion this evening.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of things to discuss, so if you don't mind, I'm gonna try to keep us moving here.
Chair, members of the board, I'm Tom Bottom, the town planner here, and I have put together some slides of some edits to the articles that we had talked about, that I'd asked for some feedback from folks on. So anything that's been added to a slide has not been discussed by the board in general, but it's feedback I've got for folks. So they're on the slides tonight for discussion for the board. I don't think there was any discussion about the coastal pond overlay district, so I'm just gonna skip past that. On site plan review, Article 7.
Hold on.
Tom,
May I?
previously, so that we move right on through these, because we've already had the public hearing, when you do a presentation like this, we hold a small discussion here, if there is any discussion, and then if there isn't, we vote to move it to the warrant.
One after the other.
Yeah, that way we're, okay?
So, any discussion on Coastal Pond Overlay District?
No.
Motion to move it?
Okay, then I move that we move the coastal pond overlay
Article.
warrant article.
For favorable action at town meeting.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next.
Article 6.
Pam seconded that.
Yep.
Under Article 7, site plan review, this article is written, and we've had some discussions about would it be two separate articles, but in this case, it's in the warrant as one article with two changes to Section 240 of the site plan review. 240-192 on applicability, and this gets back to the issue of gross floor area or structure. At our last meeting, we talked about amending the site plan review, so it would read, any new development or expansion in use on a lot which would add more than 1,000 square foot or more of structure versus gross floor area. So that was that minor change from the perspective of the building inspector and the staff to create that, rather than floor area for a structure. So that would include any structure built, whether it has a floor or not. And this, of course, gets back to the discussion that's been going on about, should solar canopies be on site plan review? And if a solar canopy is 1,000 square feet, then it would be included in site plan review.
I have a question.
Paul?
What's the urgency with the 7 days for the approval by the planning board?
That is a requested edit by another planning board member that I'll get to, speak to it if you like. Do we want to finish 192, or do we want to jump down to 193?
Let's finish 192 and then.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were,
Are you planning to break this apart into two for the warrant?
Well, it's presently it's in the warrant as one article.
Okay.
So I guess we can talk about both sections, since it would be moved as one article at town meeting. So, subsection 24193C was that no certificate of occupancy would be issued until an as-built plan prepared by a registered architect, landscape architect, professional engineer has been submitted and verified by the planning board's agent. It was pointed out that there is no such term as planning board's agent, is not defined, so the planning board's designee. So that would be verified by the planning board's designee within 7 days of the as-built submittal, that all conditions of approval have been met. The 7 days was a concern from one of the planning board members who said, I don't want this thing to drag out. I don't want somebody to be done at the end of their process and have to come back to a board. So they would like to ensure that when that as-built plan is submitted to the staff, that the staff would look at it, confer that it is done within 7 days of that submittal, to make sure that the applicant who's done his work and gotten things put in place gets an opportunity to get a certificate of occupancy. And if within that 7 days, the as-built isn't confirmed, then he'll have to go back and make those repairs. But within 7 days, they'll have an answer that, yeah, you're good to go, or no, you've got to fix a couple things in your plan.
Good to go for occupancy, right?
No certificate of occupancy.
Right.
Correct.
just seems like a short period of time, 7 days, to be able to put that on.
But it's an internal staff review, because essentially, the planning board would have said, we approve this site plan, go build it. And that as-built plan comes back to staff, and we run it by engineering and make sure that we're good, and don't have to schedule another hearing and another meeting with the planning board to
Right.
confirm that everything's been done per the board's direction.
This was done because, listening to some people having worried this is just making the project longer and longer and longer, so put a little heat. It should be able to get very quickly, because it's been being monitored throughout the whole process, inspections are going on, and they submit a drawing showing, here it is.
Certified drawing.
Yeah,
And the nice thing from my perspective, for the applicant to know that you gotta put your stuff in right the first time if you wanna open on your prospective, grand opening date.
and I can say that a lot of times, I've looked at plans, and they're not what we approved. It just, and no one checked. So
There-
this is necessary.
There is one that's currently, working its way through where we're looking at the plan, go, where's the stuff?
Yeah, I know.
Uh,
Many stuff,
yeah.
lots of stuff, as I read.
A couple stuffs.
So what happens in that case?
No occupancy
We'll talk about that another night. We're gonna keep moving.
Well,
Okay, Pat?
I've got a question on this, because again, it's what I'm used to, it doesn't mean it's the right thing. But when we vote to the warrant, we usually vote it as printed. Now, we can't do this exactly as printed, because we're showing in red the cross-outs, and in bold or in blue, the changes, and I'm not sure.
As recommended.
Well, if I may,
Yeah,
I have talked with the folks who print the warrant and edit the warrant and make sure, what's my drop-dead deadline to get you the final text? So they would like to see it by 10/10. So any recommendation the board makes tonight,
Wow.
oops.
any recommendation the board makes
So it can be
tonight,
as printed.
I will be editing them and submitting them out to the folks tomorrow, so they can include them on the warrant.
That's terrific.
That's fine.
So there won't be floor amendments, so this will be as printed in the
As
warrant.
printed.
Okay, well, if we do it this way, and they vote on it, as this is with the cross-outs, that's what they're voting. So then I think we see that in the bylaw exactly as that, but I'm not sure.
Well, for the purposes, my purpose is just to show folks what changed, that's why I put the bold strikeout version.
I understand why you did what you did.
Okay.
I just don't know the laws on this. That's the only reason I'm bringing this up at all.
I think the red will be gone and the blue will be gone,
Correct.
and it'll be as printed tomorrow.
Okay, that's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what
If
it's
the
saying.
board will move to replace this section with that section,
Yeah,
essentially.
okay.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, just one final comment. There's been some discussion here on this article, talking about certified by an architect, landscape architect, official engineer. That says prepared. Are you making a distinction between certified and prepared?
Well, it has to be prepared by those folks, and they have to put their stamp on it. That's essentially the certified part. So it's a
So
certificate
prepared
of
and
speed.
certified then.
Until an as-bill's been prepared by the architect, engineer, or landscape architect, and it's been verified by the board. So essentially, they're gonna give me a stamp plan.
If it's stamped, that's fine.
So then if we're done with discussion, I move the changes as they're shown up there to 240-192 and 240-193C.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Let's see,
Solar overlay district.
Solar Overlay District. Article 8.
This particular slide, and you may notice some changes, I did get into some of the font issues, because people had suggested there's some font issues, so I'm playing with the font to see how that works. So this is the bona fide certified town meeting font size, 32 for the ledger, 28 for the body, 24 for subsections. So this article got quite a bit larger. The only thing that's really different from this article as proposed before was correcting that Roman numeral GUFA, where I dropped a V, and adding one additional parcel. This parcel that you see underlined in bold right here, 2202012013. I'm gonna split up a couple of parcels here. So that parcel, that new parcel, is this one right here, that's part of the Lawrence Lynch property. I have had a number of conversations, a number of meetings with Ed Kirk and the folks at Borrego who hope to put solar on that site, and their request to us was, well, with this petitioned article, with this overlay district, would you include that one parcel? It's about 3.6 acres, it's landlocked, about half of it's cleared. So in this case, it would be adding that small parcel to the overlay district. And I don't want to speak for the applicant, but what they had said the last time was they felt pretty comfortable with the bylaw that's being proposed for their uses. They did want to have some discussion with the board about, changing some of the lot coverage issues for solar, making them more generous for lot coverage. And they also wanted to talk, we talked about, are those setbacks proper? We had people at the last meeting talking about, is a 100-foot setback enough for the residential? Is a 35-foot setback too much where solar butts up to solar? So those were the questions that the applicant had, who is the proponent of Article, maybe S11, I don't have the list in front of me. But with that, essentially, we make it feasible for the folks at Lawrence Lynch to develop their property by including this new lot, 2202120003. These other portions of these lots that are under the power line easement, that is this strip that goes right here that connects the Lynch site to the town site, to the Cape Garretts and the other reigning folks here, just to have that one contiguous overlay district.
John?
The proposed addition there, 003, is there a residential abutter to that?
There is.
And was that person at the,
I don't know, they were included because you see, and I brought this parcel up because this shows this is the new parcel right here. So when we did the initial abutters list, it included this parcel, that's that residential parcel right there. So these folks would have gotten an abutters list.
That's a big house with a swimming pool, right? We saw this.
Correct, you can see it from the aerial
Yeah.
photography.
But the majority of that abutter is abutting the treed portion of the lot.
Correct.
And the cleared portion of the lot is further away.
So this parcel, this one right here, is the residential lot. We're gonna go to the aerial photography just to make sure that I'm right. So these folks would have gotten an abutters notice when we sent them out for this parcel. So even though we've added this parcel, it's really not gonna change the abutter notification for folks because anybody who's 300 foot from this would have been in that sort of little carve-out.
But does it jeopardize this because it wasn't included in the public hearing?
Well, I think we had the discussion about it during the public hearing, but I don't think it jeopardizes it at all, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just gonna. Yeah, that's the extent of the zoom that I can get to that, but that is that residential parcel right there with that house.
So they have that great big long driveway coming into that site. That's their land, right?
Correct. So they drive down to here into this parcel with the house and the residence.
Any other board comments or discussion? Okay. Need a motion?
I move the large-scale ground-mounted solar overlay district as it has been presented to us.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay. Article 11, moratorium on solar energy systems.
So Article 11, the edit here is, you see in blue on bold, that no building permit or special permit for the construction of solar overlays on business zone property. The intent of the moratorium was not moratorium on every solar project in town, but just those in business zoned areas, as I understand the intent of the moratorium. Oh, sorry about that. So that was the one edit to Article 11 on the moratorium for solar energy.
Discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is this article coming up to possibly be repealed by town meeting?
I could tell you the intent of it would be to, if all the other articles pass in front of it, it'll be removed.
Correct. The intent of this bylaw was in the event that the previous articles regarding solar and site plan changes weren't moved, that this would be the stopgap to say, all right, we'll just put a
This is
hold on all.
not necessary if they get
We'll
approved.
put a hold on all solar until we sort out the issues of solar that we've talked about previously.
Because the problem is what constitutes a structure. And
Right.
that would kick in site plan review. That's our only objection, because there are ramifications.
Unlimited site coverage.
Right,
If
so,
if it isn't, that's the whole reason behind it.
right. I mean, it's not that we're anti-solar or anything, but we do need to have some oversight on the siting of these units.
I think it was very confusing to people because
Right.
of the residential.
Well, the residential was just
Yeah,
a mistake.
yeah, that was-
I never intended that.
So if Article 7 is passed,
We
then
got beat
this
up.
goes away.
Right.
Yes.
So it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So,
Simple as that.
simple as that.
So put
Unfortunately,
an S on article, so it's articles.
yeah, the English is not good in the last sentence.
Oops.
This bylaw is proposed, or?
No, the other two up there,
bylaw
7 and 8.
proposed in the event, articles aren't voted.
We'll have the typist flogged. That'd be me. My apologies.
Unfortunately, this particular article causing a lot of angst among people in the community, because they see this as a way for the planning board to stop the installation of solar energy systems. And that's not really the intent. I think this board, individually and collectively, is in favor of solar panels. It's just, this is a housekeeping article, and I think it's being misunderstood. And while I think there's some value in keeping it there to go forward, I'm questioning whether we should delete the whole thing and hope the other one passes, or is that too risky?
I thought about that, and I just wanted, the reason why I brought this up is I was envisioning unrestricted solar covering every part of our business to development and our cores of our center and all the parking lots. And I just, with no lot coverage, 100% anywhere they want. And I think reasonable regulation for the, you know, for the not crowding of our streets is a reasonable thing for the planning board to do. It's right in the preamble of what our zoning is and why we have zoning. It's reasonable regulations to have good things in good places. And I don't think we ever envisioned 100% lot coverage with solar and over areas that are already landscaped and everything. It just wasn't envisioned. This is a situation where we got caught, and I have to take the blame for it. I should have come up with this 2 or 3 years ago. I didn't wake up until somebody put it right in front of my face, and all of a sudden I said, wow, I better do something. But I should have noticed it before, and I didn't.
Well, and the other issue is places that have certain designated number of parking spaces are losing those spaces, and it's always written in any motion or decision that we make that any changes to that have to come before us, and it didn't.
And you can't consider these things open space. No matter how much you love solar, you can't consider these structural, they have almost 10 by 4 down 4 feet in the ground and, you know, thousands of tons of structural steel, and you just can't call it open space.
And I see not having a definition of structure having an impact on other things. You could have a pole barn, there's no floor
Right.
in a pole barn. So how does that affect something like that? So I just, it's like we said, it's housekeeping. I think we need a better definition of structure.
Changes in technology are requiring changes in
Right.
bylaws.
Right, so I think it's a good move.
I just think we maybe need a preamble to this, that the town and the planning board is not opposed to any solar, and in fact, we encourage solar, but there has to be some parameters in the business districts. But I mean, I don't want anyone, because I'm a big advocate of any non-renewable energy source, and I just think we need to sort of make that.
I'm the one that proposed this, and I spent 4 years of my life building a 4-megawatt power plant in this town. So I don't, you can't say that I'm against solar. I worked on it as a volunteer. These things are money-making situations, okay? These reduce the operating cost of those buildings, make those buildings more valuable, and they're putting in, because those people are not helping the town, not offsetting town costs, they're making more money. And they're doing it with 100%, right now, they have the right to do it with 100% lot coverage if we don't put some checks and balances in.
But there's a board, there's 7 of us,
Right.
so you can't say aye.
Well, I'm
it's
the one that
board.
proposed it.
I understand.
If, I can tell you right now, if I don't have support, I'm willing to withdraw this article right now, if you don't like it. I have no problem doing exactly what the board wants.
Okay.
Absolutely. I was gonna get up and admit that I should have come up with this about 2 years ago because I made a mistake, and we all blew it, but
In the warrant book, that bottom bullet should be explanation :
The description.
right.
This bylaw is proposed in the event the above Articles 7 and 8 are not voted by town meeting in order to afford the planning board time to develop new regulations on solar
In business districts.
in business
In
districts.
business districts. Not in industrial, not in agricultural, not in
Just in
residential.
business, right.
In business districts, because our local comprehensive plan talks about where the growth of the town's going to be, and we have specifically identified the village cores where we want to change the growth and put it, and that's part of a long-term strategic plan or comprehensive plan the town has.
And there's another change that has to be done there, that 240-13, that should be 240-12, because 240-13 is definitions.
Correct. That was the space that was reserved for, so. And currently in 240-12, it just says reserved.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to make sure who it was reserved for, and now I know.
We've got those things thrown around, and probably something was removed at some point in time.
Yeah, the other thing very interesting as a side, there's been no shortage of folks who have come up to me and says, you cannot prohibit solar. The state law says you may reasonably regulate it. So the question I had, and I did some research and finally gave up and asked people on the listserv, when this was proposed, when this adoption came in the state law, 1985.
Right.
Well before anyone ever conceived of solar as large-scale solar overlay districts of acres of solar. This provision was put in essentially to allow people to put solar on their building or on their site as an accessory use. So it had really nothing to do, 1985, these were, as one of my planner friends pointed out, not a glimmer in someone's eye that there'd be solar farms out there. So I think what we've got is a reasonable regulation.
Oh, so we need a motion
Yes.
to pass this with the changes we've just discussed, to recommend it to the warrant with the changes we have just discussed.
With an explanation,
That's
right,
one of
Pam?
the changes.
You want to make
Yes,
sure the explanation
do.
is there.
But it's the explanation that's already there as a bullet, with the addition of.
Yeah, but that'll be taken out as a bullet, and that'll be
We're gonna say
explanation.
explanation on the warrant,
Probably in italics, too,
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
to make it, sure. but-
distinctive.
Motion second.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Dimensional regulations, Article 13.
Article 13, there were no changes in Article 13. This is something that the building inspector had asked us to consider putting into zoning. Currently, on their brochure that they hand out, they basically tell people, if you've got a structure, a shed less than 100 square feet, you can put it within 3 feet of the property lines. That's how they do things, but there's nothing in the zoning bylaw that codifies that. So what we'd be looking at putting in this, a shed 100 square feet or less shall be at least 3 feet from the side and rear property lines. And that will give the building commissioner some leg to stand on if someone contests the fact that you could put this within 3 feet of a property line.
Pam?
Is that because that shed can be taken down at some point if the property changes ownership and somebody says, wait a minute, it's a 10-foot setback?
Yeah, I'm a little out of my league here, but essentially, a 100 square foot shed has one set of rules. A 200 square foot shed has a different set of rules. At a 200 square foot shed,
10-foot setback.
tougher to move around, the traditional accessory housing structure.
Right.
So you don't need a building permit?
You don't need a building permit to do this, Pam. You can buy it and
Right.
have it dropped on your lot,
I
put the
know.
concrete blocks 3
I mean,
feet
we-
away, and you're done.
Right, well, we had an issue with that before, so I just want to make sure that's
So
understood.
if someone puts a shed in their backyard and the neighbor objects, it's in the bylaw.
This was a tradition, not in the bylaw, right? They did restrict it to 3 feet, but they didn't have it in writing, is that what?
And I don't know if this is in the building code, but it's pretty standard in most places. In Kingston, it was the same thing.
Yeah.
I
100
believe
100
there's a-
square foot,
There's a full flyer they have
Yeah, it's a
downstairs.
pamphlet.
A pamphlet
Yep.
that says sheds,
Yeah.
and it has this in it, but it's
Correct,
not
yeah.
in the bylaw.
Yeah.
So the instructions are there, but the bylaw wasn't. So this is housekeeping again.
so we'll be doing two things. We'll be creating a zoning bylaw where there's a pamphlet, and if we get some traction on the article about accessory housing units, we'll have a pamphlet
For
to
that as
go
well.
with an article. So we got a pamphlet but no article, we'll have an article and a pamphlet. In short.
Charlotte?
A question about sheds that came up from the photographs that Mr. Hufelder was showing us, where neighbors have put up not one little shed, but bunches of little sheds. They're like little chicken farms or something. Is there any restriction on that?
No, lot
There is-
coverage.
There is,
Just-
well,
yeah, just-
actually, if they don't have a special permit and they're not getting a building permit, they can keep dropping sheds in one right after the other, as long as they're 100 feet.
Yeah.
What do you
I've seen
think?
them. I've seen, John, you're laughing, right? Have you seen some of these?
I got 2.
I know people have 3 and 4.
We saw them tonight in the photographs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's up for another discussion, I think.
But,
Make a note.
but it's important to have these dimensions, because I can tell you, there's been numerous properties, when we've had them surveyed to go build a house, we find somebody's shed on our property. And we've actually had to tow them off of our lot onto theirs.
It happens all the time.
Yeah, all the time.
Move
So,
it.
may I move section 240-68 as printed on the screen?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
This one will take a little while. Article 14, accessory apartments, submitted by that's ours.
I do not know what else I can tell the board about accessory housing units at this point. We've had a number of discussions about it. There's been a number of folks at the working groups. So these are essentially the slides, once again in town meeting font, that talks about the changes to the bylaw. So the changes in the existing bylaw, we are requiring that the lot size be not less than 7,500 square feet. The measurements of the accessory structure will be measured from the exterior side of the outside wall per Massachusetts building code. The footprint of the new detached accessory structure, the footprint of the new detached accessory dwelling unit cannot exceed that of the principal dwelling. G, an accessory dwelling in excess of 4 bedrooms may convert 2 of the existing bedrooms into 1 accessory unit. H, the total number of bedrooms on the lot shall not exceed 4 when the lot contains less than 20,000 square feet. A property has a pre-existing bedroom count that exceeds 4 bedrooms per 20,000 square feet of lot area can maintain that number of current bedrooms but cannot increase. And in section J, owners of properties in coastal pond overlay districts that want to increase the number of bedrooms beyond the density outlined in I can do so only provided that both the principal dwelling and the accessory apartments are connected to the municipal sewer system and only to the extent allowed within the applicable sewer district bylaw or regulation, or 2, an on-site septic system with enhanced nitrogen removal approved by the Board of Health is installed on the property. This second sentence 2 was debated here by the planning board back to the accessory housing committee that brought this second language in that essentially said the Board of Health's job is to do septic. And then lastly, about design standards. And what I have here is sort of a busy slide with lots of colors and things like that. So the original language from the accessory housing working group ends right there with neighborhood. So the working group came up with compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. One of the comments received was, rather than compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, consistent in the exterior character. So that full sentence will read, the architectural effects, and I have to read it again because I put it in there and I'm sure I missed something. The architectural effects, comma, as a result of an accessory apartment being constructed within the principal dwelling or attached thereto, shall be that of a single-family resident consistent in exterior character.
That's,
Something seems to be missing from this.
yeah, it's confusing.
Charlotte, you had that
that's your
language. Is that the
wording.
language you wanted?
Yes, what's wrong with it?
Exterior character of the primary dwelling? I mean, what was it? It seems like there's a word missing.
Yeah.
Instead of a
Well-
single, it should be the.
This is about, they're separated out. So A talks about only when the accessory apartment is all within a single building.
Aha, so the character, right, there it is, right,
Right.
there it is.
And it says that it's being constructed within the principal dwelling or attached to it. So it's one single building with a consistent exterior character.
You don't have a concrete block structure on a wooden shingle
Yeah.
building.
Exactly.
And John
And
just
then
said,
B is, okay, so if it's gonna be separate from it, then it has to be the same character and period of architecture as the primary residence. And I think the change that's being asked for is we had said, well, you could make it be like a garage or a barn. And to go with the neighborhood, and this isn't mentioning garages or barns. This is saying consistent with the primary resident, no matter what. So it's going to match the building you've already got, or the first building you're going to build, and if it's within it, it has to be consistent all the way around. If it's separate from it, it has to be the same period of architecture and materials. So you're matching up only to your primary dwelling.
yeah.
Yeah.
Pam?
So I absolutely agree with you, and I think the plan that we saw was the first that I remember seeing 2 new structures. Building a new structure and then building an accessory apartment. And I think that's a separate issue.
May I comment on that, Jim? Is that all right?
Sure.
I'm pretty sure that that is the first time that we've had it, and it's what makes it important, really, because it's the first time it came up.
We had one very early on where they built a new house and they put it inside.
Inside the house.
Inside
That's
the house.
different than this.
Right.
Yeah,
Because
but this
basically-
time,
Fits A, I mean, fits A, but not B.
Yes.
but this time, it's all new construction, but they're separate, and I don't think we had that before.
No, and I think we need to talk about that.
Right, because, okay, Kevin's proposal, excuse me for calling it that, but that way we know what we're talking about, that it was the same character and period of architecture as the primary residence, and we didn't like it because of the massing, not because it matched, but because the massing was wrong to make it seem as if it were a single family overall on that lot of land. It wasn't. It was clearly two houses.
Right,
And it was the massing and the design that did that.
and what I'm saying is, I think this is not, we never discussed that as part of the accessory apartment bylaw. This is sort of the cart before the horse, because that's nothing the planning board has discussed. If someone is building, it's basically building two new houses on a lot.
Yeah, but we should have thought of it. And now it's been brought to us, and now we can think about it. And would this language help in making a better result than what we decided collectively we didn't care for tonight?
Bob, go ahead.
I have to say, we did think about it because as much as we didn't want to have dates, I wanted to have dates because I didn't want to be in this position that we're in now. And because I thought it should be existing structures and not new structures. And you know, there were arguments for this, and I was against them. I'm still against the 40% and the 800 square feet. I like the 30 and 600. So
But respectfully, we're trying to actually provide more housing.
I know, I
That's
know.
what we're really
But
trying to do.
800 square feet is
And the fact
a
that it's
big
being
unit.
built new
That's-
shouldn't preclude it, the fact that it's meeting the goal of the bylaw.
I know, and I listened to all those arguments, and I went along, but I knew this is what was gonna happen.
And I agree with Bob. I mean, this was.
I mean, when we talked about this originally, we were looking at people with garages that were in
barns.
existence, or barns, or whatever. They had an existing structure, and this was gonna allow them to convert it, because there were so many illegal ones out there. People were doing it anyways, and we thought we could bring this in, make it legal. I just didn't wanna see this as something,
But we are where we are.
yeah, I know,
I mean-
I know.
You have to let that one go, Bob.
Yeah, I know.
I have
It's
to.
it's like
agree with
that in
you.
the first
I was the
Super
one
Bowl
you-
loss to the Giants.
I was the
can't
one you
let
were
it go.
arguing with,
I know,
okay.
I just can't let some things go.
I just don't like to see
You
the
told me
building
so.
of two houses on a lot. To me, it's just building,
Unless it's just, it looks, I mean, the accessory unit, they can be done all the time if they're built in the same architecture, close, subordinate to the main structure. It can work on two separate buildings on a
I
lot.
think what people are objecting to is if this was an existing garage that was going behind this house, you wouldn't have a garage on a garage.
Right,
I think that's
right, that's
the
the
main issue
right.
that,
But I think that I'm always thinking that the architectural effect of a single-family home is what we gotta
yeah.
use, sink our teeth in,
Right,
is that's
right.
where our strength is in this document.
right, because you wouldn't have the two houses.
You wouldn't have the
Each with a
two-
garage and.
Two porches, you wouldn't have
and
it. John, sorry,
I just want to suggest that in the paragraph A, where it says, shall be that of a single-family residence, maybe it should be shall be that of the single-family residence, because this is something that's in the existing structure.
I agree, John.
I agree. That
Because
makes more
a
sense.
single-family
Right.
residence could be anybody's residence,
Right,
but it should be the or this.
Paul?
Yeah, I would say this.
Maybe,
I appreciate the comment about the difference between A and B, and maybe to emphasize that, it might be helpful to italicize and bold the word within in A and detached in B, and then it would emphasize the difference that you explained, because it wasn't obvious before.
I agree with you on that, but I think, John, I can see what you're thinking, but I think it's actually going backwards from the thought.
Explain?
The architectural effect, as the result of the accessory apartment building being constructed within the principal dwelling or attached to thereto, shall be that of a single-family residence. If it's that of the single-family residence, you're referring to
Or
a
this.
very specific single-family residence that,
well, it's being attached to this residence. It's this house. I think it should say this,
How about of the primary structure?
should be that of this single-family residence. That's what, we're working on this one house, not,
If you read it as, okay, let's leave out the descriptive clause there. The architectural effect shall be that of a single-family resident, consistent in exterior character. That's the thought, and the thought is correct. I think what's making it harder to parse is the length of the clause as the result of blah, blah, blah. But when you read just the declarative part of the sentence, the architectural effect shall be that of a single-family residence, which is clearly what we want it to be. I think the English there is as clear as it's going to get.
What if you put in consistent in its exterior character?
That'd be fine.
That ties it.
That does tie it. Consistent in its exterior character, that would be good.
Got that, Tom?
Shall be consistent.
That, and all the folks who are writing down at the same time I am, consistent in its
Its exterior character. And I think that what Paul has suggested, either underlining or bolding the within and the detached, shows the distinction more clearly
Or
between the two
italicizing.
separate thoughts, yeah.
Does it solve your problem, John?
that's fine with me.
Right.
And I
That's
didn't
the whole
appreciate
point.
that until you mentioned it.
Oh,
I looked right through it. I didn't pick up on it.
On B, I like and in the same character and period of architecture as the primary residence, because I think what we're trying to achieve is character, not duplication.
Yeah.
And so that says, hey, you don't have to copy what's there, but you have to have it,
It has to go with the
consistent.
house, you
you
know.
don't have to have something that's
You're not wearing two
modernistic
different color
all-glass
socks.
structure right next to a Cape Cod.
Right.
well, if you think about houses in cities like Providence with their
Mhm.
carriage houses, or in Newport with the carriage houses, I mean, I think that's probably why barn or garage was included in the first thought, because that was the thought.
Right.
Those would be accessory structures.
That is correct.
Right.
as to
Well,
why they
Sure,
were-
the
and
trip
the-
house on the green is,
and it
we
only-
always use that as an example.
It only applies really when it's detached.
Mhm.
And just sticking a cupola on what is clearly a separate house doesn't make it a barn.
Right.
It just isn't enough.
Or putting fake barn doors,
Right.
doesn't do it either.
Might
We
not
did
either.
Yeah.
We did that.
This is why there'll be site plan review, so that one by one, you get to say.
Do we have any more language on this one? Is there another page?
So just to be clear, we are sticking with A, with consistent shall be that of a single-family resident, consistent in its exterior character.
Right.
Yeah.
And on B, as written,
Yeah, as proposed.
and the only other thing is to see that new addition to the change of the bylaw, that parking for the accessory apartment shall be provided on site.
Mhm. So do you want me to move
Do we
this?
need the, that of a single? If we said, shall be consistent in.
Shall be that of a single-family residence.
Residence. Consistent
Yeah,
in
oh,
its
yeah.
exterior character.
Okay, I'm not an English major, but I
Is
think-
there another page?
No, sir.
I have a question then. We have not addressed the measurement system for the
Oh,
second
that
floor.
was- That was, yeah,
And I think that is a serious
Critically important.
yeah.
problem, because it's the scale of the house can change. If we don't do it, a cape with the second floor with very low ceilings on it could be counted as a 2,000 square foot house, when really it's a 1,000 or a 1,500 square foot house.
Yeah.
So we have to have a formula. I've made my recommendations before, and they all been shot down. Does anyone else have a recommendation of how to measure the second floor?
I fought for this in that committee, that it's a real simple matter, because you don't want people going up on ladders and stretching tapes along the second floor. So you measure the inside from outside wall to outside wall, and add a foot, or add 8 inches, or come up with some dimension.
Okay, well, here's the thing.
But, and that would take in consideration knee walls. because you'd be measuring inside the knee walls, and then you're just
Oh, you
adding,
add a foot to the, you're saying to get to the outside
to get to the
dimension.
outside
Oh, so you
dimension.
measure the inside usable
Inside-
space.
Yeah,
Add what would
yeah.
be
Okay, now
on
I
the
see what you're getting
exterior.
at.
Yeah,
So if you can't basically stand up in the, not stand up, what's the, is it 7 or
5
feet?
foot, yeah,
So any part of a room or wall that isn't 5 feet doesn't count.
yeah, yeah. In most capes are,
That'll do it, because the methodology that I recommended, a gambrel is 90.
yeah. yeah.
Okay, I mean, it is the, I
Yeah.
think it's
Oh,
the same math.
And I like that.
But no, I couldn't sell it.
But
They-
nobody would buy it, and I
Well,
don't
that's because they don't understand
why.
it, and
Yeah.
it's something we use.
But I think your interior dimensions and add a foot or add 8 inches or whatever, inside wall to inside wall, length and width of the house, not going room by room by room.
5 foot clear height.
5 foot clear height.
You gotta put in the clear height or it won't
Yeah,
work.
right, right.
You all understand
Yeah,
that?
I do.
I think
and
so.
that's good.
And the addition of the foot or 8 inches is to accommodate
Outside
as if you
walls.
were measuring from
Outside.
the outside wall.
Right,
Okay.
So they don't have to go up on ladders
Yeah.
and measure in
I
5
don't-
different
I
spaces.
don't want people doing that.
yeah.
And 8 inches should cover it with today's
Yeah, I mean,
standards.
2x4 wall, you got, 8 inches to the outside.
Mhm.
So what are you saying, 12? I mean,
We could go 12 because we're building with 2x6 now.
yeah,
so,
okay.
I mean,
Give an example, please, of first floor and the second floor. How you, I don't, you've got me lost here.
You can measure
So first floor,
exterior first floor.
first floor is a 24 by 36 or 26
Yeah.
by 36.
Exterior.
Yes, what's the second floor?
You measure the interior measurements,
yeah,
clear, 5 feet at least clear. So, if you have a slanted roof, you don't count, the eaves, all the way down, and you add a foot to it.
well, the only measurement you would really have to do is, let's say you've got a cape with a full shed dormer on the back. You've got a knee wall on the sloped roof.
What's a knee wall?
Half a wall.
Half a
The little
wall.
short ones.
You already,
The roof line coming
So-
down to here,
so-
going up like this.
so you know the back length from the foundation, so you've got that length. But what you don't have is from the inside of that knee wall to the
Exterior
to the exterior wall. So by measuring the interior and then adding the width of the
6 inches on each side.
6 inches on either side, or 8 inches, whatever, or 4 inches on either side, that would give you an outside dimension. Because what we have now is everybody's measuring inside dimension, room to room to room, and it's just, I think it's confusing for people. I think you have a simple formula that, outside dimension, you take your outside dimensions where you can get them, and the inside dimensions where you can't actually dimension outside wall. That would be the process.
And a lot of the capes don't go all the way out to the side.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Typically,
back to back.
typically
They
they're
have a
about.
little dormer that's got the full height, but, the rest of it is almost half the space.
Yeah.
In some areas, some houses, it's a 50%. It's gonna, the number should be,
I mean,
between 50 and 90%.
my druthers would be.
to use the formula
use
that
the
everybody else
formula.
uses, but
And what formula is that?
the National Association of Assessors has a code that they define roof lines, and they used 90% for a gambrel, 75% for shed, full shed dormer and 2 dormers on front, and 50, and I think 50% for a cape that just has a small finished area up above. And you just take the ground floor, multiply it by one of those percentages,
Yeah.
add it on. It happens to be the same thing the assessors use in our town, but they use it in every town.
And why isn't that the better
It
solution?
got shot down by the,
Yeah,
Shot
the-
down by whom?
by the group redoing
yeah,
the working group.
the working group.
And I don't
Well, but-
understand why they shot it.
I don't either.
But isn't the working group advisory?
Yeah, they are.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, then let's go with the simple thing.
Yes.
Absolutely, that's an advisory group, and I think we ought to go with the assessor's mode of measurements.
Right, so much easier to do.
I
Yeah.
mean, why are we doing this?
It's a
This is-
spelled out formula, it's easy to
Yeah.
use, and the math is real
Then I
simple.
Yeah.
move that we use that.
I'd second it.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Gonna use it.
So Tom, the exterior measurements for the second floor would be using the, what do you call it again?
The assessor's,
Uh,
well, I mean, for the whole interior of
Space-
the house,
No, you still measure the outside
right?
of the first floor, of the building,
Right.
And the second floor is gonna be a percentage depending on the shape of the roof.
okay?
And there'll be, we can-
According to the, what's it called, National
National Assessors.
Assessors Standard, or,
I think it's space codes. Well, I'll look it up and send it to you tomorrow.
I think likely what we would do is we would just spell out those particulars.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I
Eighty
think,
percent,
We have to have something there.
right.
And I think that's better than having nothing.
I think it,
Simplifies it tremendously.
Yeah,
It makes it a standard.
is standard, yeah.
right.
So we could, I think, there's a lot of sins, but I think we get the job done with 3 of them. 3 different ones.
Pretty much, yeah.
One at, I think 90% is a gambrel, because it's almost the exact same size.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think 75% and then 50% would be the 3 different uses.
And you're sure that that's the accepted standard?
I have,
Could we check that?
Yeah, can we check on that and then include it?
Because the point is to use the accepted standard.
Right.
What do you
I'm
think it
fine,
is,
no,
Jim? We could-
I'm
we
in
could-
agreement. I
We-
wish,
We already voted it, so.
yeah,
yeah.
I-
All right. Will you get that to Tom?
I will.
Okay.
And I can actually have examples.
very good.
Be-
So in that case, it's the board is saying, this is what we want to adopt in measuring the bylaw.
Yes.
Right.
Second and third floor.
Yeah.
Because remember, our zoning's 2.5 stories, and some of these places actually have a half story all the way up. And that's the one that you measure at 50%, because it usually has no roof,
you don't
pitch in
have-
the roof
you don't have
left.
to keep
It's up an
going.
attic.
Just give it to them tomorrow.
I have it.
Yeah. So, shall I move this?
We did.
The
Yeah,
entire,
Oh,
No.
Okay, before you do that,
Okay.
can I ask a quick question? I thought we were calling Article 14 accessory apartments. That's just accessory housing. Is
Yeah,
that-
oh, yeah.
Accessory apartments.
Was that intended?
I
No,
think
it's
we're
on
flogging
here.
the typist again.
Snap that whip.
Apartments.
Yes, that'd be me again. So yes, our bylaw does call accessory apartments.
Okay, so that
And
should be
Article
corrected
14
then.
would say accessory apartments when it gets to.
So I have
town
one
meeting.
issue, which is this new development for me, because I've only been on the board for a year, well, 2 years now. But you
Seems
were,
longer than that. I'm kidding.
I've made your life a living hell. I'm so sorry.
Seems
No,
like-
I'm not.
Seems like forever.
I'm sorry.
It's getting late.
You can do an evaluation anytime. My concern is this sort of new entity that I had never thought of. You have a lot, and you decide you're gonna build a primary house and an accessory apartment. And I do have an issue with that, because I don't think we yet have discussed that particular aspect of accessory apartments. And I have a big issue, because now it's not, now it's, well, my in-laws are gonna live there. I may not live there, but my in-laws are gonna live there, which to me is no longer even an in-law apartment. If the owner isn't going to be there,
Owner has to be there.
no, the owner may be there, but it may not be his in-laws, therefore it's really not an in-law apartment.
No, the in-law apartment goes away. There isn't an in-law apartment. We're talking, if this is.
And I'm saying maybe we need to discuss that if people are gonna come forward and say, well, what I'm really looking to do is build an in-law apartment, and I want my in-laws to have their own garage and their own screened
Well,
porch.
they can do that right now, but they have to make it part of their existing home.
Yeah.
And then they can do it. And the entrances, they don't have a separate door, they just have a regular door. There's no building code changes, but it has to be approved as an in-law only. Remember, we had one out in East Falmouth, and they were trying to bring it through, and we said, no, that's an in-law. Guy said, you're right, they don't have to be here, and he walked
So-
out of the room.
So is there, I haven't seen the guidelines for an in-law apartment.
Another point, another time.
They're there, Pam.
It's there, but we haven't been talked about it at all. I don't even know where it is, but I've seen it.
Then I'd like to put this concept of building 2 new structures on hold until we figure it out.
just a moment. Two new structures are inherent in the existing bylaw.
Yeah.
It's not different. it's coming clear in your mind, you've got a different focus now, but it's already inherent in what we've approved, and it's been through town meeting.
Because we want people to be able to build two structures, one of them accessory on the lot that can suit this purpose, right from the get-go. That way they'll have the exact same exteriors, the looks, the feel, the period. The period will be now instead of 20 years ago.
Okay, but, all right, if that's the case, then the way it was presented, this new one, is not, they have separate, come off different streets
Oh,
with
that
their
one
own
we threw away,
garages.
yeah.
That I will never support. I mean, just,
Okay,
Okay.
Tom, you're in the right section there for what we're talking
Alrighty,
about.
so essentially, I'm going to add an E and a half
Yeah.
with the language that Mr. Fox is providing for me tomorrow.
Okay,
Well, it'll actually be F, but we'll renumber all the ones that follow behind that. For the, essentially, 90% measured from exterior wall, accounting on the second floor, 90% for a gambrel, 75% for a cape with dormers, and 50% for what I called an unadorned cape.
unadorned, is that boring?
Sounds better
I
than,
think that works.
Okay.
okay.
So it's one of those three, and
Right.
if we're missing a little bit, it's not gonna make a big
Right,
deal, because
right.
it's really only trying to develop the scope, the scale
Yeah.
of the property.
Yeah.
And I think that addresses it.
Right, and so do we have a motion on that?
I will move Article 14, sort of as it's been printed, with all the amendments we put in tonight and changes that we put in tonight, to the warrant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Opposed? None.
So as moved with Charlotte's amendments and Jim's measurements.
And don't forget to change accessory housing to accessory apartments.
all right, you got it right on the agenda.
I know.
Yes. I will.
Submitted by petitioners, Article 9 on petition of Ronald Sweg.
All right, so I'm just going to change course here for just a moment.
Jim, what is it we're asked to do about these? These are not put forward by us, they're put forward by citizens.
Well, we either, on this one, we either recommend it as printed, or we can say, we can recommend indefinite postponement, is what we can do.
Oh, okay, thank
So
you.
our recommendation for, if we don't agree with the petitioner, is a definite postponement. Now, the petitioner at town meeting floor can get up and put a positive motion on it and have town meeting vote on it and go right over us and do whatever they want. We only get to make a recommendation, and it's only to town meeting, and it can be overridden with one sentence on town meeting floor, which I'm sure you'll see happen this year.
Okay, I just wondered what we could do.
So in the case of Article 9, the petitioned article, this would be to allow, to see if the town will vote to amend the Code of Falmouth, Chapter 240 zoning as follows. Article XI, light industrial aid districts, add, and I'm not going to get into the numbers because it just makes things just more wordy and confusing, to add to LIA, ground-mounted solar arrays as a primary use, ground-mounted solar arrays as an accessory use. To amend light industrial B districts to add ground-mounted solar photovoltaic arrays as a primary use and ground-mounted solar arrays as an accessory use. And in light industrial C to allow ground-mounted solar arrays as a primary use, or as an accessory use, because they're already permitted as a primary use. So what I did at our last hearing is I went through the town and just identified those areas in town where there were LIA and LIC districts. So I just put together the slides that show where these areas are at. The first ones you see are further north of here. As you get into town, some of these LIA districts and LIC districts get smaller and a bit more compact. I pointed with my pen, so in this case, we've got LIA here as we get out of the East Falmouth Highway. Closer into town, this is off of Jones Road. There's LIA parcels here. There's some of these LIA parcels along Palmer Ave and Crane Avenue as well. So if we look at adding those as accessory uses, it would be, and primary uses, it would essentially be on all these parcels, whether LIA, LIB, or LIC.
And he was doing agricultural, all the eggs are in there too, right?
No, sir.
No.
No?
This
is
particular
just-
article
This is just industrial.
Only LIA, LIB, and LIC.
Mike, I have a comment on this. We spent probably 2 years, 3 years developing LIC. And our plan was that if any of the parcel owners that owned LI A or B wanted to have ground-mounted solar array, all they had to do was change the zoning to C and they'd be all set. The other reason why we carefully did that is a lot of our industrial property has been built with residential
Yeah.
and commingling it, and we specifically said we didn't want to do that. And we put, if I'm speaking on a turn, Pat, I'm saying
No,
what
you're
you're doing.
not.
Okay,
It's
I just want to make,
absolutely
because when I say
correct.
we, it's what, we
Yeah.
worked a long time on this, is we wanted to have the light industrial C not have the residential in it, so we wouldn't have this conflict. And so we said, it's great in industrial, but if they want to do it, they could convert to C and they can have it. So we've given them a path.
Yeah.
And no one's
Because
asked for it yet.
that would invoke a hearing if they want to change the zoning.
And
You'd have the hearings, it'd have to be a town
Two-thirds
meeting.
vote would be the whole process, so
Yeah.
we laid it all out.
So it gives a butters and.
We created the district and then said, if you want it, you have to apply for it.
Yeah.
And this would just give it to them right away, no application, and I think it's problematic.
Yeah, yeah.
So we need a recommendation of indefinite
I
postponement.
move indefinite postponement.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's go, what's next? On petition of
10.
Christopher Lynch and others, Article 10. People have
So-
been waiting a long time for this.
So Article 10 was a zoning bylaw put together by the folks at Lawrence Lynch. And this was essentially to allow, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaw to allow ground-mounted solar photovoltaic arrays as a principal permitted use on lots of 20 acres or more in agricultural and light industrial districts, subject to site plan review by the planning board, and to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaw to establish site plan review criteria applicable to ground-mounted solar arrays on lots of 20 acres or more in the agricultural and light industrial districts.
Hasn't the applicant said they, if our article passed, that they would withdraw this?
Those are the conversations that I have had with the folks. We heard from them 2 weeks ago when they said the bylaw as crafted would not affect their plans going forward with solar. They had some concerns about some other applicants who might have issues with the bylaw as written. But essentially said, with this bylaw and the addition of that parcel that we voted favorable action on earlier, that they would be able to move forward with their proposal under this bylaw if it passes at town meeting, under our Article 8, as opposed to Article 10.
Then I am going to suggest, with that background, that we recognize what's going on, but we offer an IP, because then the applicant,
Bring
if
it
ours
forward,
doesn't
yes.
pass, can bring it
Can step
forward
those up.
with this explanation.
I think that's the right solution, too.
All righty.
So indefinite postponement will give the if all else fails, the applicant can put a positive motion on town meeting floor and go forward with their plan.
Knowing that we would support that, but it's in conflict with what we're trying to do right now. So, may I move indefinite postponement on this? Does that sound right to everybody?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Mr. Clower, you've been waiting a long time.
Well, actually, we have one other,
Sorry, did I skip something?
yes, we have one other petition article as well. This is in the North Falmouth District. One parcel. Article 25. To see if the town will vote to amend the official zoning map of the town of Falmouth as to extend Business 3 District by rezoning from Residential B to Residential Business 3, that portion of the land at 289 Old Main Road, shown in the Falmouth Accessory Map 05A 04004000, the premises, currently zoned Residential B, so that the premises is in its entirety shall be zoned Business 3. Said premises are further described in a deed recorded in the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds book in page listed here. So in this case, and we have, I believe, the
We never, I remember it, but I'd like to see the map again, because it's
Yeah.
been so long.
What was that one, Article 15?
We skipped over that, and I'll go
Yeah.
back to it.
Okay.
Tommy will explain why we skipped 15, but,
I will. We skip 15?
Yeah.
yeah, you would jump to 25. That's okay, Kate, let's bring up this one first, because we're here, and we gotta keep
Brian
moving.
Fort right now.
So yes, we did, and that is, thank you for pointing that out. No, I did not want to skip that one by design. So this is Article 15's maps here. So what we're going to do is, we're going to go back to our viewer. I'm just going to put that right there. Not you? Put a direct link on this last time, right to the viewer, but it went away. Our apologies.
What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to bring up the viewer, just to look at that parcel in North Plymouth, in North Falmouth. Chances are.
Not on the desktop?
No, the folks at IT said they would be regularly swiping the desktop.
Can you go out to GIS? Site's down, okay.
Okay, we're gonna try it one more time.
That's unfortunate.
My apology, let's.
Well, let's talk about it from memory for a little bit. Like, we can just have, does everyone remember this? Okay, let's see if we can. Because I think the discussion I wanted to bring up is this something we want to just bring it to town meeting and let them make the decision, or do we want to, the decision is either we indefinite postpone it or let it go to town meeting, are the two choices we have, right?
I have some thoughts on this.
Okay, let's have it.
Okay. First of all, what they are attempting to do is supporting the policy that we were establishing many years ago about eradicating split lot zoning.
Yeah.
Now, whether we want to see, which direction we want to see it go into, whether it's B3 or, that's an open question. But we want to eradicate split lot zoning. Secondly, from the way it has been presented to us, there would be a covenant that would assure us that there would be affordable housing there, rental housing. It would be kept as rental housing. And the historic house would also be kept, both of which are important to our LCP, from the historic element and from the housing element. So all three of these are positives for us to vote on it. Now, contraindication, as was presented by Patty Johnson, is that there are a lot of these lots in North Falmouth, and they would really not want to see them all flying over to B3, which could very well happen because that's more valuable to do that. So it seems to me that whichever way that we recommend for it, we're going to have a bunch of unhappy people.
But the front of the lots were already business owned, right? We're talking, we don't have lots where.
Correct.
Where it's, the business is in the back.
No, I understand.
So,
But you're dealing with the split lots.
right, so the split
they're-
lot is the issue.
But they're not empty lots. In
No.
fact, they are residential lots.
Absolutely.
And many of them are, I don't, yeah, I bet they're all more than 50 years old.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they're historic. And there's a whole issue here of the character of an entire neighborhood. And could it be that when it was zoned business, that they went too far with the business zoning when they were thinking about that North Falmouth intersection, that little tiny village? The lot that they're talking about, I believe, is next door to a hairdresser. Is that right? Yeah. So that on the corner, you've got the little, now it's a Tedeschi's, the little corner spa, and then there's the hairdresser, and then there's this particular lot. The rest of the neighborhood, across the street, there's a funny little stucco building. It looks like, oh, bit of New Mexico snuck in there. And then there's Epic Oyster on another corner, a bank on the fourth corner, and now they've developed condominiums. Looking at the history of that neighborhood, a little further up the street on County Road, there's a newish, probably 25 years old, kind of mall kind of area that someone wanted to put in what the neighbors feared was a gigantic condo development. And it was fiercely contested by the neighbors and resolved by someone in the neighborhood buying it so that it would not be turned into condos. It's a densely packed village, neighborhood of residential houses, really wanting it to stay that way. So do we want to be in the position as a planning board of going against the entire neighborhood and starting this business of condominiumizing North Falmouth Village? I'm going to vote against it.
Me too.
For that reason.
So your recommendation would be indefinite postponement, is what you're saying?
Exactly. If that's what we're allowed to do, that's the
It is.
negative we've got. That's the negative I'd go for.
So why don't we, John?
I would just take the opposite approach. I'm not worried about one lot creating 20 more lots or 10 more lots. Everyone would have to go through the same process and go through town meeting. I would much prefer the town meeting make this decision. And the applicant, like Pat said, is going to keep the house historic and do an affordable rental. We need additional housing in this town, and it can't just be in East Falmouth. It has to be.
Presently, we don't have a multifamily district. The only place we can put multifamily district is in business zone properties, and it's limited to 6 units per acre, and many of these lots are less than an acre, so you only can have 2 or 3.
Right.
We have a challenge on housing, so there's 2 really good arguments here. So I think we leave it up to town meeting.
But
is
it's
what I
only
say.
one lot. We're only discussing one lot, not a whole neighborhood,
Right
not.
now, right now, and then you set a
Well, that-
precedent.
No, it's never a precedent. The
Yes,
next
it
per-
is. Each
Yes, it is.
time, if you go ahead and you condominiumize one of them, next time it's easier because
It
you've
still
weakened your
has to go
argument
to
about
town
the character
meeting.
of the
It's-
neighborhood.
You use the word condominiumize as a negative term. It's creating multifamily housing.
Or
I chose
multifamily
my word,
businesses.
and I'm sticking by it.
Or multi-businesses in that district.
In this case,
Correct.
as opposed to something else that might come before
That is
us,
correct.
we have been offered a covenant.
Right.
Now, I would presume, and I hope this will be true, but I don't know the law in regard to this, that the covenant would then run with the property if the ownership changed.
Absolutely,
On it?
they do.
In
yeah.
perpetuity?
They do,
That's-
yes, they record it. A covenant is recorded. A restricted, I don't know, I'm not gonna go out for outside counsel. Some of them expire after 25 years or something like that.
I can answer that if board would allow.
Please do.
Up to the mic.
I wish I could remember.
So a deed restriction, if I were to deed you a property, Mr. Fox, and I said that you can only use this for single-family purposes, in my deed to you, that would expire after 30 years. A voluntary covenant that's placed on the property by an owner runs essentially into perpetuity. So what we'd be doing in this case is offering a covenant that said that the rezoned portion could only be used for the multifamily housing, not for any other use that would be allowed by residential B, not for any use allowed by business 3. So that's the same that the town has done with the 480 Main Street property, which is the Charlie Marzot's project that went forward about 12 years ago. Because
It can't be a shopping center.
No, exactly. And I think it's important to note that even the multifamily housing is not a by right use. That is still a special permit use that would be regulated by other boards.
Okay. Thank you.
So with that attested to, And knowing the success of Charlie Majolat's property down the street here, and how attractive that is. I don't know how we can require that, though, because this is a town meeting vote, that there be a covenant, but I think
We've already submitted the covenant to the planning board.
you have. So if town meeting would vote this, then that would be filed. I think this would serve the residents' purposes in that area, because they'd be getting the housing and keeping the housing there.
The residents haven't asked for housing. They've asked for not changing the zoning. They didn't ask for additional housing, so
No, I know
you
that.
can't say that.
We're talking residents, the whole town, not one
Right.
particular spot.
Spot zone.
See, I look at it, in situations like this, I like to hand it off to town
Me
meeting.
too. Let the debate go on. It's a
Yeah.
two-thirds vote.
Yeah,
It really is. If you're so sure that the rest of the town feels that way, there won't be any argument, because it's almost impossible to get a two-thirds vote
I'm not
unless
sure about
everybody
the rest
wants
of the
it.
town. I'm sure about the rest of the village.
Right, but that's the thing.
I don't
It's the
wanna
whole
take
town
that right
votes,
away.
not
They
a
aren't all
village.
members of town meeting.
Right.
I'd rather see it go forward without any, what is it, the indefinite
IP.
postponement.
So, let's take two votes and try to move quickly. We have a
So
motion.
then let me move IP on this so that town meeting decides it on
On which
Article
one?
25,
Oh, great.
289 Old Main Road.
Yeah.
So you,
That's what we were
you
discussing.
want to move indefinite postponement.
I'm hearing the argument that we should let town meeting decide it.
But if you put
I'm hearing
indefinite
Bob, and-
postponement,
Thank you, Pat.
I thought it's the other argument. I thought you put it on town meeting floor. We recommend it as printed and let town meeting vote it with two-thirds vote up or down.
You can do that, too.
But if we recommend indefinite postponement,
Then,
I prefer,
what?
you don't get to talk.
I don't hear,
Okay, what do you prefer?
I prefer the, not indefinite
And
postponement.
so do I.
Okay.
I think it, well, we gotta come up with a vote. If we want to vote indefinite postponement, if you want, would you like to move indefinite postponement?
Sure, let's give it a try.
Okay, and you would like to second it?
I would.
Okay, I just want to keep things moving, okay?
All right, yes.
So
I move.
we have a motion and a second for an indefinite postponement. All those in favor, raise their hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Doesn't fly. So it doesn't pass. So now we want to, as printed.
Correct. I move the article as printed.
Need a second?
second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
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 It passes.
And that vote was 5-2?
5-2.
5-2.
Yeah.
Oh, a minority is an ugly thing for me.
Hey, you know what? This is the first time tonight we've even done this. This is pretty good, folks. Been working real hard.
This is gonna take an hour on town meeting floor.
It's gonna take
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of time on
Yeah.
town meeting floor,
Yeah.
and that's where it should take time.
And, yeah,
I'm on vacation then.
Okay, now we have to go back to 15, or,
Yes, if we could, and my apologies
okay.
for,
No score in the Red Sox game, by the way.
4-0.
What inning?
4-0
Third?
Sox.
What?
Sox are up 4-0.
have you been recognized by the chairman?
Come on, Tom, let's go. We got a lot more to do here.
Can you put that on the big screen?
Happened last time it went. It's like we get crazy.
you can
Yeah,
mute
little
the,
corner.
you can mute the sound.
We got work to do here, folks. I wanna get out of here.
Yeah, me too.
I should save some runs from last night.
So Article 15. Dramatic pause while they go to the bullpen. So Article 15, from memory, as I'm looking for it, was essentially to permit the accessory housing units that we have had quite a bit of discussion about in the general residence districts. Presently, it's only permitted in 2 zoning districts and not in the general residential districts. As I understand, this was an article that was on the warrant for the Springtown meeting, received an indefinite postponement, and the applicant is requested to bring it back to town meeting to include in general residences accessory housing units. Presently, as I've talked to several members of the board, the things that are allowed in general residence are a detached, semi-detached dwelling, which are a two-family dwelling built at the same time, a single family as well, and a two-family. So essentially, if you allowed an accessory housing unit, you might see as many as 3 units potentially on a general residential district. But at the same time, if we want to look at creating housing and potentially workforce housing, these accessory housing units, general residence districts are located closer to those centers of commerce and things like that. So it makes it easier for someone who's in that unit and is a working person to get to those sort of, areas of.
And they're generally buffers.
So once
From
again,
business to residential, kind of in between.
So once again, similarly, I went and put together the maps, and each of these maps, by the way, has the exact same scale. So when you see a lot on the map from here or another one, they're basically all in the same scale. So in this case, we have GR here at the corner of School Street and Woods Hole Road.
Okay, I see it now. It took me a while to focus on that. It's hard to see.
All right,
Oh,
so
okay.
right there
Yeah.
with their magic fingers. Here, GR on Carriage Shop Road, right by the corner of, got a lot of glare, by Collins.
So they're generally next to business-owned properties.
So here we have GR on Cheat-Ticket Highway, just north of Norris Path. GR here on Old Main Road, the area we were just essentially just talking about a couple minutes ago. General residence here.
Wait, could you go back to that one?
So this was the subject parcel we were talking about previously. This one right here on with under the cursor's hand, and so the GR is just south of that. And then here we have GR on East Falmouth Highway, right at is it Deborah Ann Lane.
At what?
Deborah Ann Lane, you generally see duplexes around where GR is. If you drive around now, it's pretty much, that's what you see.
And
a lot.
so some of the more extensive areas of GR here in the town, in the
Downtown.
downtown area, essentially all the property just down the street, off of Main Street, and down here off of Locust Street and Main Street. So this corridor along Palmer Avenue, in sort of the in-town housing is GR. So the applicants is requesting, Kevin, there's our last map that we could have found an hour ago if I'd actually listened to Corey when he told me, try this one. My apologies, Corey. So essentially, the applicant has requested accessory housing units as a use in the general residence district.
Generally speaking, how big are those lots?
20,000 square foot, I think, is the minimum lot size.
Minimum lot size, 20,000 feet, unless it's pre-existing.
And as we talked about in our accessory housing
Or
bylaws,
non-conforming.
7,500 square foot would be the minimum lot size.
Right.
So if you had a GR lot, at least 7,500 square feet, you would be able to permit it, but you may have to go to the zoning board of appeals because of the non-conforming lot.
Three units fits pretty easily on 12,000 square feet with the septic system. I built several of them around town on GR. 10 years ago, I was pursuing all the GR property, trying to build 3 units on all of them. I had a plan. I didn't get too far with it.
But you don't currently have a plan like
No,
that?
I don't have a
Okay.
plan. I'm no longer in the development game. So, what do we think here, folks?
Why wasn't it included to begin with?
Because we felt that you could already put multiple housing on any GR lot.
So we didn't need this kind,
That was our reasoning at that point.
but we changed our minds?
Well, it's been pointed out to us that there is a lot of houses around town that would like to have it, and they're not, they're prohibited from having it, and they meet the qualifications on all other standards, lot size, everything else. So we're taking away the potential of having more accessory apartments in our village centers because of this decision. I don't have a problem taking the town meeting.
Yeah.
Neither do I.
Yeah, I think
Should go to
anything,
town meeting.
Yeah, keep in mind, two-thirds vote town meeting is a real hard challenge
It
to
is.
happen, and I don't think there's anything wrong with us laying it out to town meeting, say, okay, town meeting, what do you want? You okay with this, Charlotte?
I guess actually what's bothering me, if it had been part of the original proposal, I would have been all for it, but because it's isolated now by itself, you wonder if people would think the planning board was sticking it to them.
I think it's more like housekeeping.
Yeah, it's, we didn't think, we're the, basically the three of us that crafted this
Right.
thing, and we just didn't think about it. We just
Yeah,
said it
that's
wasn't
what you had-
necessary.
Yeah,
Well,
well, you said it
also-
was an accident, that it
Yeah,
was left out
we didn't think hard enough
the
about it.
first time we talked about
Yeah.
this. Yeah,
It was an,
Oversight.
oversight, because when we really, first, I'm the one that said, oh, we don't need it, we got 2 units there anyway, 3 if one of them's
Yeah.
affordable. So we just said, forget about it. Really thinking about it, if somebody said, well, you're really gonna eliminate 50, 100 potential places for these things, do you really wanna do that? I probably would've said no.
Well, if we've already got 3 units on one of these.
But very few
that
people
was the
build the 3
thinking,
units,
is
yeah.
that you already had room for more than
Right.
one unit on the property, so that's why we didn't push for it.
Right.
And also too, when we were pushing this, for this law, we always look at a small area, or, because we talked about 80% of the town could essentially put accessory apartments in, and we always find an area that we want to apply something, just to see how it goes. And, you know, the jury is out for me when it comes to how the accessory apartment bylaw has worked in the year that it's been in existence.
And we've capped it with the, I think now that we've put in the 7,500 square feet
Yeah.
lot, we put in other protections, so I think there's room for
Yeah.
expanding it now.
Yeah,
yeah.
but, you
And
know,
I
as I
think
said
we've put in
before,
better protections for the aesthetics of it.
Right, I think we've solved
Right.
some problems. Remember, it was
Yeah.
just the first go-round.
yeah. And as I said before, I like to let town meeting decide.
Yeah, I do too.
So then I move Article 15 as printed.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Okay. We have to go back to discussions.
Oh, no,
Well,
we don't have to have.
we don't have to have,
reports.
I'd like to skip for tonight committee reports and Davis Straits. Go right to next meeting.
Do we have any correspondence, Jim?
I didn't bother looking.
We did have, there are two.
There's Martha's.
It's been postponed.
Yeah, that's right, that was at the very beginning.
Yeah,
That was
we
so
already
long
did.
ago.
There was the one on the regional plan, policy plan.
That's it.
What's it asking us to do?
Just
It's a
attend
notice of meetings that we can attend and probably should.
October 17, October 24.
Good night.
Good night, thank you.
Thanks for the update.
That was sent in our packet.
Yeah.
So we can read it individually.
Does everyone have a copy of this?
Yeah, yeah,
Good, I'm
Yes.
not gonna read it.
yeah.
Okay,
Then there was this
we're
one.
gonna skip future agenda items. We can talk about that next time. We'll have more time then, it's really late. Next meeting is a joint meeting with the Affordable Housing Committee, 6 PM at the Herman Room. That's next Tuesday, so make the note,
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock,
I
Herman
can't go. I'm going to Spain.
okay?
Oh,
Ah,
you have any room in your luggage?
And then, what's the October 23rd?
that's our next meeting.
Oh,
That's our
that's
next,
just the next meeting.
our next regular scheduled meeting. It's the-
Regular meeting. So that one, we'll have discussions about agenda items and other things. Okay. That completes our agenda for this evening.
I move adjournment.
Second.
Thank you.